Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault, and you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict, and boy, do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy
They
there.
got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughing him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
All right. I don't have time. I don't even have time to use the rest of the audio tracks this morning. We have so much stuff to cover. So much. It's going to be, well, this is the way it's going to be, unfortunately. Today has already started. It's too late to go back. Here I am. I don't know why I was there earlier, but I was there in the corner. We have a couple things to talk about before we start court, which we need to get done before court starts. I know it sounds a little bit confusing, but it all makes sense in my head, and hopefully I'll be able to explain it. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict. So grateful you could be here today. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to start, of course, always, by asking and seeing if anybody has a birthday today, and that they're sharing their special day here with us. Let me know. I have not been able to scan chat at all. I've been busy. I will tell you, I tried to make a video this morning, like not a live video, but like a recorded video, and then I published to YouTube the way like 99% of other people on YouTube do it, and I couldn't. I tried over and over, and I'd stumble over my words. I couldn't say things right, and I guess I don't say things right here anyway, but I guess I care more when it's a pre-recorded video, like it should be a better quality. Yeah, seriously. I scratched all of them. And so we're going to do it live. And we have a Sarah Boone update today. I've got to tell you a fun story of my interaction with a judge last night. Oh my goodness. I need to probably meditate before I tell you the story about the judge. But let's just say that I've maybe spent too much time dealing with prank phone calls before the judge called me. And she did call me. And so maybe in my head I was thinking prank phone call, and I probably wasn't quite as polite, articulate, kind, and maybe respectful as I should have been. And it did not go well. It did not go well with the judge. I apologize to the entire nation because of that, or internationally as well, because I think everyone's affected because of this. But we'll explain that in just a minute.
Lawsuit.
There's a lawsuit for sure. All right. I don't see any birthdays. Am I missing something? Oh my goodness, I am missing something. I know what I'm missing. Hold on one second.
Mike. What day is it, Mike? Guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Hump day! Welcome to Wednesday. That was my best one ever. Welcome to Wednesday. We're halfway through the work week, so we have it's all downhill from here. Really, it's great news. Apologize to my kids. We're taking tests in the other room. So, oh my goodness. Let's see. Where do we start? Sarah Boone. Do we start with Sarah Boone? I'm sorry. Oh, yes, that was a good one. We'll have to put that on on a little button or something, so I can use that on days when my throat just isn't feeling up to the full yell. All right, first big update. I was making a thumbnail this morning. Right before I made the thumbnail first, I thought maybe if I have the thumbnail, I'll be able to record the video. So all I have to do is look at the camera and talk. And I thought I was able to do that, but as soon as I hit that little record button and it starts flashing on my screen, I'd be like, and nothing would come out. So I figured it must be destined to be done live. So in the words of the famous anchor on TV, screw it, we'll do it live. Let's do it. First, I'll need a little bit of water as we do this. I'm sorry to drag this out just for a moment. We need to get everything out of the way first. All right, the water has been poured. The laptop has been minded. And it's good water, too. A shout out to Deer Park Water. One day they might sponsor me, but they aren't currently. But I still buy their water religiously. 2 cases of it every week. I go through 80 bottles a week of Deer Park water. Part of it is because my kids think that they're squirt bottles and they punch a little hole in the top and run around squeezing the bottle and spraying each other. So that probably uses many of the bottles that I don't drink. But I do drink the rest. Sherry Smith says, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. Yes, I'm laughing as well. It's funny. It'll be funnier the further I get from the actual mess up this morning when I could not record a video. Anyway, so let's talk Sarah Boone. First things first. Oh my goodness. First things first. This was filed on the 26th of last month. So a month ago. There's a notice of an ex parte hearing. Ex parte means not everyone's going to be there. The judge will be there and one of the parties will be there, but not everybody's going to be there, right? In this case, I don't think Sarah Boone's going to be there, but her lawyer will be there and the other side doesn't need to be there. It's just going to be Sarah Boone's lawyer, Mr. Bankiewicz, and the judge. It's going to be, I believe, on September 8th at 9 a.m. in Orange County Courthouse. Cool. Please be covered accordingly. Yes, we'll be there, right? We're going to follow that and see what happens. Now, yesterday we got a huge clue as to exactly what is going to happen on September 8th, at least what decision the judge is going to make. And he might make it sooner, so we're not going to hold him to this date. But let's see if we can pull this up on screen here. It needs to be full screen there. Make it a little bit bigger. Here, go to 3. Oops, that was quick tease. Quick tease. We're back. Oh, hang on one second. We have to stop. 1 week milestone with no smoking. True Crime Junkie, congratulations. That is awesome. 1 week is huge. 1 week is huge. That is a huge win. We're cheering for you. I think I even have an applause section. Let's see if we can find that here. Well, if I go to the right page. There we go. Congratulations, True Crime Junkie, on the 1 week with no smoking. That is just great. One day at a time. You'll get through today as well, and you'll have a week in 1 day. That is awesome. All right, back to Sarah Boone very quickly. Here we have a motion to withdraw, and you're saying, "Yeah, I've seen this before. Why did I disappeared? I think I've got a button set wrong. Yep, it's changing with the key. That's why. Okay, you say, I've seen this before. He asked to be released a long time ago, and he did. But he's asking again. He's back. Apparently, there's a storm brewing in Florida, and it's not the Weather Watch kind. It's not. Apparently, anybody who has anything to do with any case belonging to Sarah Boone wants out. Was that too soon to go there? Yes, it probably was. But Bankiewicz is saying, look, Judge, I need to go. You need to let me go. And he gives his reasons. He says, comes now, Frank J. Bankiewicz, Esquire, counsel for the defendant in the above-styled cause, and hereby requests that this court enter an order permitting court-appointed counsel, that's Mr. Bankiewicz, to withdraw from this case and from further representations of the defendant. I don't want this case or any other case she ever has.
I'm not a cat.
In support of such motion, the undersigned states to the court as follows. On or about July 11th, 2022, the undersigned was court appointed to represent the defendant in the above styled cause. He said, I didn't choose this lady. You chose me. Okay, first of all. 2, due to the irreconcilable differences which have arisen between the undersigned, that's, me, Mr. Bankiewicz, and his client, that's Sarah Boone, the undersigned, Mr. Bankiewicz, will be unable to effectively and properly continue representing the defendant herein. Number 3, the defendant will not be satisfied with any attorney unless said attorney does not have a caseload and can dedicate his or her time solely to Miss Boone's case. 4, the undersigned has been in murder trials over the past 60 days and is presently defending a capital murder case in Lake County, Florida, which absorbs all of his time, including weekends. So I have zero time to do this. And number 5, the best possible avenue is to have the defendant represent herself as no attorney can satisfy her. Wherefore, undersigned counsel respectively requests that this honorable court enter an order granting this motion to withdraw as counsel for the above named defendant. I hereby certify that the true and correct copy of the foregoing document has been furnished via e-filing to the Office of the State Attorney and the defendant at the Orange County Jail on this 22nd day of August, 2023. So Sarah Boone saw her lawyer yesterday, or at least saw the lawyer delivery letter, okay? And he's saying, P.S., I'm out. Now, he said the same thing, not quite so verbosely, but he said the same thing last time, and the judge said no. This is there are very few ways for Mr. Bankiewicz to actually get out of this if he really, really wants to get out of this trial. Number 1, and I hate to start here. He can die, right? I'm not saying I wish that on him. I'm just saying death is one way to get out of representing a client. It's not the preferred option for most people, but judging the conditions, I would still put it on the table. I'd say this is still an option. Number 2, he can retire. He can say, this bar card has been great. I'm giving it back. I never want to step foot in court again. I'm done. I'm going headed to the beach. Don't call me. I won't call you. That's number 2. Other than that, he's pretty much stuck. I guess he could try move out of the state, and then not be available. He could try some other things, but I don't think that would work as well as either of the other 2 options. So that's it. He's basically, his hands are tied, and the judge has already said, look, this has drawn on for too long. This has dragged on for years, okay? Over 3 years now, according to Sarah Boone. That's like 6 of her birthdays. It's been going and going and going, and he says it needs to go to court because, honestly, Sarah Boone, with every day and with every letter the judge gets, she has a stronger and stronger argument that she is not being treated fairly, that her rights are not being respected and honored or held up. What else do you, she has rights to be able to go to trial. She has a right to a speedy trial. Even if she doesn't have a right to a speedy trial, she can't just be held indefinitely. She has a right to have representation, adequate representation that can represent her. And we've got lawyer after lawyer saying, I can't represent her. So, yeah, it is crazy. That's where we're at. So we're expecting, by the 8th or sooner, another letter. Oh, sorry. We'll definitely get another letter because Sarah Boone just got this one from her lawyer. And although she's been looking for pen pals for quite a while with the judge, I think the judge is just the go-between. And she's probably going to write another letter to Mr. Bankowitz through the judge saying, what's this letter I just got? So we're looking for that letter. That's going to happen. This is the way she communicates. She probably would have wanted to meet with him in person, and I don't think he did. But anyway, so that's where we're going. Can this be a bench trial? Just wondered. This is nuts. I don't think so, but I wonder if. Okay, first of all, the suggestion that Mr. Bankowitz puts in here, that the best possible avenue is to have the defendant represent herself as no attorney can satisfy her. This is absurd. Okay, this is absurd. This is saying the best thing for this person who's been charged with murder. Okay, it's life in prison is on the line here. The best thing you can do is not have a lawyer in court and represent yourself. And any lawyer worth their salt will say that is never the best thing to do. You don't know the system. You don't know how to, subpoena witnesses. You don't know how to, ask questions, cross-examination. You don't know how to get evidence admitted into court. You don't know how to make filings and motions. No, you cannot navigate this system by yourself. And maybe we're traffic court where you're in a small town, the judge, has a lot of leeway. Possibly represent yourself. Do your best. Be respectful. The judge will probably work with you. But if you're talking about, a case like this where you're charged with murder, this is absurd. And for him to put this in the letter, I think the judge is going, pardon my French, the judge is going to be pissed. The judge is going to be pissed that he comes and it says the best thing is to not use this system, to not have representation. Honestly, I don't know how the judge can keep him on the case with this. If this is his opinion, this is his attitude going in there, this is just like a whole stack, a whole bundle. What is it? A gross of arrows? Do you call it a gross of arrows? How many? You have 144 arrows. Is that gross? In Sarah Boone's quiver for inadequate defense. This is like pre-writing her appeal and rubber stamping it, accepted. If you move forward with an attorney who treats it like this, who says, I've put no time into the case because I haven't had time.
There's a lawsuit.
I'm not able to put time into the case. And, she's, I can't work with her and I won't work with her and she should go by herself. I think he needs to be let go. And unfortunately, this might be good for Sarah Boone. This might be good for Sarah Boone because if she can now convince maybe say it goes to trial in a couple months or whatever, a new lawyer, and she loses, okay, because I think that's the outcome. In her appeal, if she can convince the appellate court that she never waived her right for speedy trial, and throughout all this has said, I've never waived my right to speedy trial, which she's done, they might say, we have to let you go. We have to reverse this. Your rights were not honored. Your rights were not respected. Your rights were not held inviolate. I forget what that word is. There's a word that I want to use there, and it wasn't that one. So substitute that word with whatever I just said. So yeah, judge has to make a decision. This case just keeps on giving. Oh, all right. So that's one way. That's one thing. Any questions on that? I'm sorry, I've been ignoring chat for just a little bit, and I haven't even had the messages, which I did do. I didn't even get them on screen. Sorry, guys. I've been failing miserably. I need to say we missed who on the internet this morning. Let's see, who was it? DMB Secondus was second. I remember that. DMB, who was right before you? Who was right before you on the internet search? Going up. Mystic Mama. Mystic Mama was the winner. Congratulations, Mystic Mama. You've won before. You're a repeat offender. Congratulations on being first in chat. You know what to do. The internet is all yours to maintain. You can rename it if you want, but it changes back to internet tomorrow. It's just sort of like a reset thing. I think you're going to do great, Mystic Mama, by the way. I have all my confidence in you. Carolyn says, I think some retired attorney will come out of retirement and defend Sarah Boone. I don't know. I just don't know. I wonder what the expert witness report came back as. Maybe that was what the attorney's like, oh crap, even our experts against us. So I don't know. This is going to be the best trial ever, and I'm too excited. It's in a made-for-TV movie. I could play her. I know all her lines. Not intentional. Law is the law, even for Sarah. Yes, the law is the law, and she should be held accountable. But at the same time, the law has rules that they need to follow. I don't know. I think I'm leaning more and more to that. This whole drag on, delay, multiple lawyers situation is going to be for her benefit. That's just more and more. All right. Okay. So let's go from Sarah Boone to another judge, and let's see. Let me find this. Okay. I'm going to play a little bit of audio if I can. Let me first get to the right spot here.
Aaron Patterson just sent a super sticker with 2.99.
Aaron, thank you for the first super sticker of the day. Appreciate that. I love it. It looks great. Appreciate your generosity. Thank you so much. All right, I'm trying to get through a commercial here. Let me turn on. Well, let me do closed captioning, subtitles, English. Okay. I have to. This is the news story, and I only want to play part of this. Okay, hold tight. Man. So the other day I called. Let me tell you the story of what happened here. The other day I called Person County. That's the name of a county here in North Carolina. And went through the ring around. First of all, I went online and looked at everything I normally would. I looked up their standing orders for media. I looked up any custom rules for high-profile cases. I looked up their procedures and forms for applying for media access for cameras in the courtroom. I went through all this, and there's basically nothing online. It's a little. I say it's little. It's a tiny little county with a tiny little courthouse in center north of North Carolina. It's right up near the border with Virginia, and so I went through all my homework, and then I jumped online and found the phone number, and I called the court clerk, and I said, "Hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I need to do. Who do I need to talk to?" And they said, "You need to go to the court clerk," and they sent me to the court clerk. And of course, I'm calling regarding this case involving a father who shot and killed a driver after the driver ran over his son. And then the dad and the mom stole the driver's truck and drove away, leaving the driver and their son dead in the road. So it's a little bit bizarre case. It happened here in North Carolina. It actually was the news went international. It was all over the place. It was played. I saw news stories in England as well as up in Canada and all over the U.S. It's pretty bizarre, pretty crazy. But as far as murder trials go, it's not like we don't have SA involved. We don't have young children involved or anything, and so it's like a pretty straightforward case that the media might want to follow. bizarre as well. I mean, where does this happen? So I call up and I try to talk to the court clerk, and I get a message saying I'm going to be on vacation for like a week and a half. And I'm like, well, good. Well, there's a hearing between now and then, so I left a message for her, and I said I'd like to actually, I'd like to go back and talk to someone else who can maybe cover for her during that time, because I'd like to cover this hearing. Ended up getting another clerk and talked to her, and she's like, well, I can send you up to the judge's clerk. And so they sent me up to the judge's office. Well, guess who answers the phone? The judge answers the phone. And I didn't know this. She's just like, hello? Okay. Like, I don't normally pick up my own phone. Hello? And so I explained who I am and everything. And then I get a call back from the judge's clerk. Okay. And she's like, okay, now who are you? And what are you doing? And where are you located? Spell your company name? And what do you want to do? And I'm going through, and she's getting all this background information that I've already given already. And then she's like, okay. And she hangs up. And then I get a call back from the judge. And this time she's not timid at all. And she's like, I've decided, no. I'm not going to allow cameras in the courtroom. I'm like, oh, okay, that seems rather abrupt. Can you tell me why? And because I questioned her, she like got on edge. Like, I guess you're not supposed to do that. The judge just rules, and you're like, yes, ma'am. I didn't do that. That was not. There was no your honors or anything else. I'm just like, sure, hey, lady, type of thing. And so she's telling me, she's like, I'm doing this because there's victims in the courtroom, and I'm like, there's always victims in the courtroom. There's always family members in the courtroom. And she's like, and she's going on and on. And she's like, it's a high profile case, and I'm closing the cameras to video. I'm like, all right, okay, so we're not going to get any video. And I said, that just surprised me. I'm going to have to go back and look. We do this all over the country, and it's surprising that it happens like this. I thought in the Supreme Court, for North Carolina, it was different. She's like, oh, I'm well within my rights. I had challenged her. She's like, I'm well within my rights. So Part 15, I'm allowed to do this. And I'm like, I get it, lady. This is your courtroom, your rules. And so I said, so you're not allowing any video? Are you allowing any still photography? No. I'm like, oh, okay. Are you allowing any press? Or are you like closing the courtroom, sealing the courtroom? Because there's no reason to close the courtroom. All the reasons, the Part 15, the Rule 15 in North Carolina to close the courtroom, all those reasons do not exist in this case. Do not exist. They're not there. And she says, no, I'll let media in, but you're not allowed to bring your phone. I'm like, oh my goodness. She wants to close this as very tight, very tight. So I don't think I caused the problem. I definitely didn't help the problem by how I interacted with her, but that case is not going to be open to the media, apparently. And I'm sitting there, I hang up the phone with her, I'm like, wow, she was really testy. And I was like, okay, I wonder why. I mean, am I the a-hole type thing? I wonder why she was that cranky. And so I got online and I Googled a little bit, and I found her. I'm like, oh, here she is. Well, in North Carolina, you have to run like a candidate, like a political office, to be a judge. It's a partisan election. You run, and she, in her primary election, there were 3 people, and she and one other person virtually tied. Okay, out of 32,000 votes, they virtually tie. Then, next thing along, you got the general election, right? So the 2 top vote getters in the primary now go on to the general. And in the general election, she runs, and she wins with 52% of the vote. So she just squeaked one out. Okay, barely won. I'm like, okay, maybe she's a little testy. People don't like her. She, 50% is a pretty low, margin of winning. And then I searched some news stories, and I found it. I'm like, oh, this is why this judge does not like cameras in her courtroom. And I found a little story here. Let me read you the headline. He would have killed every single one of us, judge says of defendant slain in Person County courtroom shooting. What? Someone was shot and killed in her courtroom in Person County. I'm like, oh, this deserves a little bit more inspection. We've got to look a little bit further. And sure enough, WRAL, local news station, did a video. And they sat down, they interviewed her, they filmed in her courtroom. It was all dramatic. It was almost like a made-for-TV production, but it was put together as a yes, I need to file a motion like one of the big media companies. I might have to do that. It was put together almost like a documentary type thing. It was pretty dramatic. And I'm going to try to play you some of the audio because WRAL requested, through a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, the audio from the courtroom of that event because the audio is recorded. And so we hear the audio, and I'm going to play that here, and it's pretty dramatic. If you give me just a minute, we've got to get to the right part. I don't want to play their whole story here. Okay. Courtroom shooting. Okay. Waiting. It's playing through. I have to read the... Okay, it was September 9th in Person County. This is, I think, 2021. This criminal defendant. Okay, listen to this. Okay, the guy's a bad guy, but hang on, here we go.
I just had a bad feeling.
This is the judge.
District Court Judge Caroline Burnett recalls the building tension as Vaughn complained his attorney wasn't asking the right questions.
I'd like to have her discontinued, and I'd like to have another lawyer represent me.
Sorry, you don't get another lawyer, sir. You either get Miss Pass or you represent yourself. What would you like to do?
Yeah, and I'd like to withdraw because apparently he's quite good at this. And
Your motion to withdraw is allowed. Do you have any questions for the witness, sir?
Yes.
Vaughn proceeded to ask the 12-year-old witness questions, including whether she recognized him, and she said yes. Then when Roxborough officer Trey Wright took this stand, the defendant had second thoughts about representing himself, and conflict with the judge erupted.
I'm in the court of law, and I am innocent until proven guilty.
At that point, I got frustrated.
So where's my representation?
You, right there.
How? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not qualified for this.
The state of North Carolina gave you an attorney.
She withdrew. I didn't.
Shut up!
You shut up.
Take him.
Instead of walking out with the bailiff, Vaughn picked up a chair and threw it.
It gets bad.
And then it got worse.
He turned towards me and started running to the bench. At that point, the bailiff grabbed him and
listen to this audio, guys.
They were on the ground. I heard shouting. You could see people punching.
Burnett and others retreated to the judge's chambers as the lone bailiff, JRA, fought with the much bigger Vaughn, who reached for the deputy's gun.
Hey, he got my gun! He's got my gun! He got my gun!
When the door shut at judge's chambers, we heard the shot.
At first, it was unclear who was shot. Witnesses say during the melee, Officer Wright came off the witness stand to help Deputy Ray and shot Vaughn in the head.
I think at that.
Okay, so now I know a little bit better why this judge does not want cameras in the courtroom. First of all, her bench demeanor does not go well on camera. Yelling at someone to shut up because they talked over you. She's she's right on the edge. Maybe another cup might be appropriate for her. But this judge, she's a traveling judge. She covers like 4 counties because Person County doesn't have enough business in one courtroom for just their own judge. Yeah, lost all decorum. Ended up the bailiff struggles with the defendant after the defendant goes whole WWF and like throws a chair and in the ring and everything, and the witness actually shoots and kills the defendant. So she's not a big fan on cameras in the courtroom. She doesn't control her emotions. She represents the court. It was bad. It was really bad, and it makes me even more so want to be in her courtroom with a camera. I realize that's probably not going to happen because the way the laws are written in North Carolina. She is right. Unfortunately, the judge has total discretion at all times to prohibit or, to stop cameras from filming or recording in her courtroom, with or without cause. So she's right. I looked that up. Part 15 gives her the authority. But who got shot? The one who got shot was the defendant in her courtroom who. Basically, all he said was, I want a new lawyer, because he was mad because his lawyer was not asking the questions he wanted. Very much a Sarah Boone situation, okay? The client knows better than the lawyer, saying, hey, you're not doing it right. I want somebody else. The lawyer, so he says, I want a different lawyer. And he's like, no, you get her or nobody. And the lawyer says, I'd like to withdraw. She says, granted, you're representing yourself. which I don't think is the right way for that to happen. I think there should be some sort of communication back and forth. It's almost like they have a big word for that just for that situation. Like a I can't say the word this early in the morning. It's like a porcupine quill conversation. That's what it is. A quilliquee or something. Somebody help me out with that word. Anyway, so the bailiff didn't shoot. The bailiff got his gun taken away from him, and he was yelling, "He's got my gun, he's got my gun." The police officer who's on the stand, off duty, testifying in the trial, comes off the stand and shoots the defendant and kills him. Colloquy. That's it. I was thinking quill, and it's like, I know it's got a colloquy. Got it. So that's the discussion she should have had with the defendant to decide if he was able to represent himself. Anyway, ended up he died short minutes later, and now she doesn't want any cameras in the courtroom. So, if you would like to contact the court and see if they will change their mind appropriately, I'm not asking you to spam them at all or to be too rude or in any way. But Judge Caroline Burnett is the judge there in North Carolina 9th Circuit, 9th Judicial District. She's up for re-election next year. And yes, he did die. It's crazy. But here's what she can't do. They have to record the courtroom audio, and I'm going to be requesting every minute of it. Every minute of it. All right. Let's see. Court starts at 2:30 today, just FYI. Yes, I saw that, which is helpful because we had 2 things to cover this morning, and I still want to have a lunch. So that's what. Hope she doesn't see this. I hope she does. I really think that it would benefit the judicial process in Person County for her courtroom to be open to the press. If nothing else, it would help the electorate make a more informed decision when it comes time to determine if they want to retain her as a judge. I will tell you this. I will be careful not to speed in Person County. Okay. So that was, Kirsten, what cases are you talking about? That case was the case that got us to that story was the case of Chad Wood. And if you're interested in doing a little research on this, let me tell you, it is, where are we at? That's Koberger. That's a different one. It's also Koberger. Let's see, court dates. Let me pull up. I'll give you the quick search. Court dates by county, Person County, by defendant name. Wood. Page 2. Doing some quick searches, and I'm on the North Carolina Judicial Branch website, looking for court dates, and it's showing Chad. Where's Chad gone? There he is. No. Did I search for Chad? Looking. Chad Vincent Wood? No. Must not be Wood. Man, I lost the case. I'll have to look. I thought it was Wood. It was like a 4-letter word. I mean, a 4-letter last name. Anyway, I'll have to look it up. He's got 2 cases. Basically, he's being tried for murder and for theft and for like the Grand Theft Auto, and then he's also got possession of a firearm by a felony. He's got the 2 cases there. Anyway, I'll look that up and get that for you. I can't remember his name. I'll have to Google the name of the. It's from the news story if we can find it. All right. Maybe you should send her a link to our favorite purse judge. Let's see. Did I get the vid I sent you of the? I don't know what the word is. Coups. Illegally arresting a girl. Oh, cops illegally arresting a girl just recording outside the courthouse and destroying her property. It's crazy. I've seen a couple of those recently. The issue that I don't think that'll be solved until first of all, police officers understand and are trained better in the rights, what is allowed and what isn't allowed. Just because they don't want it to happen doesn't mean they can say, hey, you can't do that. Anyway, it's going to be interesting. I think that needs to happen, and then they probably also need to get rid of that little protection, that immunity that police officers have when they violate someone's rights in the authority of a police officer, using the authority of a police officer. If they're personally liable for that, that would change things as well. Chad Woods. So I was looking for Wood. So let me go back. Chad Woods is the name. Thank you, everyone who's coming in with the name from Tipsy Tracy, the cat, Irish Bella, Mel B. Everybody's telling me. Anna A. Lots of names here. Thank you very much. I typed Wood in here, and there are too many Woods. I haven't got to the Chad yet. So Woods. For some reason, if you put their first name in, the search does not work very well. You have to just put their last name and then scan through everything. Page 2, page 3, lots of Woods in court. Here we go. So if you want the case numbers, this is North Carolina, I think it's 9th District Court these are in. So both the cases are 23 because it started this year, so it's 2023. 23 CR, these are criminal cases, and they all start with 38, but the last four numbers are 4927 and 7012. Those are the two cases we want to follow. And there is a hearing. I think it's probably a preliminary hearing, which North Carolina does not allow cameras in by default. And that happens on the 25th for both of those cases. All right. That being said, is there anything else we need to cover before we begin the trial coverage from yesterday, which is spicy, which is very spicy? It's going to be awesome. Some states don't even allow filming the courthouse itself without a court order unless you have a permission. If juror identities could be revealed, the cops are okay with confiscating the footage. That's why you live stream all your footage, so it goes public immediately. All right. Let's see. Let's get court set up. Give me just 1 minute to get there, and we're going to start what we came for. But man, this morning was just lots of things we had to cover. First off. Okay. That's done. Okay. There it is. All right. Are we ready to begin the end of the day from yesterday so we can go live and get that done so we can watch this before they go live this afternoon? Let's go. I heard it was spicy. It is. We're really excited. Okay, I think we're good. Somebody would send the buffer tone or something if I was missing something. Okay, I think we're good. All right, let's kick this off with a bang.
Please be seated. Your Honor, the jury's all present on count. All right, we're back on the record. See, you got 0966, State Round versus Thomas Randolph. May the record reflect Mr. Randolph is present as attorney, deputy district attorney on behalf of the state. Do both parties give nation the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Orr, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Detective O'Kelly, I just have about 10 or 11 areas to go through with you. Okay?
No problem, Counselor.
Okay, so we left off and we were talking about a key to keys that were left in a door, and this is State's Exhibit 16. Is that the keys we're talking about?
That's a close-up of the keys you showed me earlier, yes.
Okay, and fair to say those were not impounded?
No, they were not.
Now, after you left that early morning on May 9th, that scene was not kept.
Why did we lose the feed. Hold tight. Oh, we'll be right back. Hang on. This just lasts for a little bit here, I think. This is yesterday afternoons. They did have a problem with the feed just briefly. Scratch all that. It'll come back. We're not going to miss a whole ton. Just a little bit of Mr. Bean's pacing back and forth, I think. This happened yesterday. Yes, it's the same thing that happened yesterday. We can't fix it, unfortunately. The feed dropped briefly. It'll be back. I think it lasts like a minute or two or something. So I was about to eat my Pop-Tart. I pulled it out, ready to take a big mouthful. I'm glad I didn't put that in my mouth because then it would be like... This Pop-Tart smells delicious, too. I know we bought like a huge case of Pop-Tarts from Sam's Club, and now I think I've eaten most of them. Guys, I have the fast forward button. What am I doing here? I can literally skip ahead through this. Where are we at? There we go.
What has been admitted as 168, that's the jewelry we were discussing, right?
Here we go.
Yes, the jewelry was laid out, that was in the bag was laid out and photographed and documented for us.
And you have, remember I was asking you about hoop earrings and gold, and you said, well, gold medal looking things, right? There's a lot of gold medal looking things there.
We're always going to say yellow metal in our report. We can't value those things or determine right there on the spot that it's gold.
But it could be valued, right? I mean, it could
certainly.
Be. Okay.
Absolutely.
And I want to show you what's being admitted as States 167. Do you see those 4 what appear to be gold and silver coins?
Oh, yes, I see what you're talking about there. You're trying to show me the bag. Yes, I can see those.
And they're in plastic?
Yes.
And you don't know what they're worth or if it's solid gold or...
Have no idea.
Walmart.
Have the Walmart bag there.
Just so we're clear, in your officer's report, you describe that this is mostly cosmetic jewelry. Did you make that statement?
Yes, it's inaccurate. It's costume.
You mean that's what you meant? Not that that's costume jewelry?
No, I meant that it's mostly costume jewelry. Yes.
That's your opinion?
It was my opinion.
And just so I can go back to the shoes for a second, States Exhibit 52, do you see that Reebok shoe right behind Mr. Miller's leg?
Yes, it appears as though his left leg is actually on top of it.
And you see that those items I'm pointing to, that's what we were talking about with paramedics coming in and checking for pulse.
Right, that's the back side. They actually stick the sensors on, and then that's what they peeled off laying there.
Strawberry, the only
Was there a
flavor.
cell phone associated with Michael Miller?
We determined that there was a cell phone at the residence that didn't belong to him.
By a person named Corey Thompson?
That sounds familiar, yes.
So you found a phone in Mr. Miller's room, but it was registered to a Corey Thompson.
Yes.
And without telling me what Corey Thompson said, you talked to him, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
And what you can tell us without saying anything he said is there was no connection between Corey Thompson and Michael Miller.
Not that he knew, no.
Except for the fact that his cell phone, Corey Thompson's cell phone, was found in Mr. Miller's possession.
Yes.
The life insurance that we've talked about, you've talked about, this was taken out by Sharon Randolph, correct?
It's signed, and the documents are signed by Sharon Randolph, so yes, I would assume she's taken out the policy.
And in order to get life insurance, you need to go through a medical, get blood, those kind of things, right?
I've heard advertisements where you don't have to, but yes, most of the time you do.
You have no reason to believe that didn't occur in this case.
I have no reason not to believe that.
Okay? And so this is life insurance that Sharon Randolph has gotten so that she could protect her loved ones, right?
I would assume that.
And I noticed that the date on this insurance, a lot of it was 2006, right?
Yes.
A couple of years before.
Unique detail.
Yes,
if you need to talk, call the burner phone.
Before the incident,
Be happy
or
to
a
talk
month
to you.
before the incident, right?
Offline.
Correct.
And at least one of them, that we don't have the policy, as you point out, but she was actually having her wages, money was taken out of her wages to pay for the premium.
Yes.
You found strong opioid medicine connected to Mr. Randolph, his prescriptions. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you had a discussion with Mr. Randolph about how potentially strong they were. Do you remember that?
Yes.
These are strong medications, as you're aware, right?
Correct.
They have effects upon people, don't they?
Certainly.
When you went and said, you told the jury words to the effect of, I was there to keep the peace while Colleen moved into the house that had been shared by Sharon and Tommy. Were you in a uniform?
No, and she was there to have the locks changed, that the agreement had occurred between the attorneys.
Mr. Randolph had numerous belongings in that house, didn't he?
I'm certain.
Including he had a Harley Davidson in the shed, didn't he?
Yes.
And he told you that he was going to go in and he was going to get his belongings, right?
Yes.
And you told him that's not happening, right?
I did.
You had absolutely no court order. You had what authority? Strike that. When you did that, he has a right to his belongings, does he not, sir?
At that point, nothing was to leave the house because that's what had been agreed upon between the attorneys on both sides.
There was no court order that he couldn't take his belongings.
I
Nothing.
didn't see a court order, no.
So you were just deciding as a homicide detective that that man wouldn't be allowed, Mr. Randolph wouldn't be allowed to take his belongings that day when he showed up, right?
On that day, no.
After that, Mr. Randolph makes claims, right? I saw that he made claims for insurance, right? Do you remember? That it's not right away, a month, two later, correct?
Yes.
There was a conversation about Thomas Randolph on the 911 call saying Mike had been ripping him off. Do you remember that?
Yes, very early on in the call.
And do you recall that he was questioned, Mr. Randolph was questioned about that, within hours about what he meant by that? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And do you recall that, and I am looking at the 5-9 statement, page 60, counsel. Do you recall that Thomas Randolph clarified and said, what I was saying on the 911, what I was probably referring to is he was ripping me off the act right then. He was ripping us off right then. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Fire extinguisher. You have talked about this fire extinguisher, have you not?
Yes.
Okay. And there was a statement that the fire extinguisher was on top of the refrigerator, right? Do you remember this?
That Mr. Randolph said that the fire extinguisher fell off of the refrigerator.
And you told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you looked up there and there was no dust mark or something that you thought should be there. Fair?
Correct.
Could we look at a picture of that?
Of the lack of the dust ring? No, I didn't
The
have.
top of that refrigerator looking down so we could see what you were saying?
No.
So you found this important, yet we don't have a single picture of it, do we?
No.
What was below that refrigerator, sir?
A carpet? Semicircle carpet.
And you looked at the top of the refrigerator, things were sort of disheveled. Do you recall that?
There was a oscillating fan that was on top of a crock pot. That would be out of place.
And Mr. Miller was laying right against that fridge, right?
Yes, his left shoulder was against the fridge.
And in fact, the fridge was dented, was it not?
Dented.
Yes, it was dented. Did you see a dent in the fridge right by Mr. Miller's body?
No, I didn't see a dent.
Did you look for one?
Did I look for a dent?
Yes, sir.
Not in particular.
Because if there's a dent in the fridge, that means something hit it pretty hard, right? To dent a fridge.
Certainly.
And you didn't notice it?
No, I didn't see a dent. I didn't make note of a dent.
And there was, you noted a mark on the bottom or on some part of that fire extinguisher showing that there was sort of like a dent or some type of defect.
Yes, on the edge of the bottom edge of the fire extinguisher, there was a flat portion where it appeared to have struck possibly a concrete surface.
And you pointed out to the jury that there was a screw to the left. If I'm looking at the refrigerator to the left, there was a single screw.
Yes.
After Sharon's death, you can see with records, banking records, that Thomas Randolph was having to take money out of credit cards or use credit cards. He's trying to survive, right? You see that?
I don't know the purposes for him with his finances. I have no idea.
Did you look for a bike
Yes, we did.
in the area?
Yes, we did.
Because you wanted to know how Michael Miller could have gotten away, right?
Because we wanted to know how he got there in the first place. Based on, Mr. Randolph said that Mike would often come over to the house on a bicycle, so we looked to see if there was a bike anywhere.
But you didn't find one, did you?
No, we didn't.
So you were concerned about who could be a getaway driver, right?
I didn't think about a getaway driver. No.
What was Mr. Miller's girlfriend's vehicle type?
I don't know.
Thank you, Adam, for the gifted memberships.
During the interview that we heard just now, you saw Thomas Randolph answer his phone and talk with Colleen. Remember that?
I heard him say that he would call, he said Colleen, and he would call her back.
You learned that Sharon Randolph had provided things to Michael Miller, right?
Yes.
She was kind to him, right?
Yes.
Lastly, Thomas Randolph said that Sharon's problem, if she had one, was that she gambled too much, right? He said that to you.
Yes.
He said that his problem is he's cocky. Do you remember him, Thomas Randolph, saying about his own problem that he's cocky? You remember him saying that?
I remember him saying too cocky.
Too cocky.
Yes.
Thank you, Red
And
Pen.
he said
Gifted memberships as well. You
that
two are
Michael
amazing.
Miller didn't have a steady job. That was his problem, right?
Yes.
Of course it was. That concludes cross-examination.
They scored like absolutely 0 points, other than that you didn't see the dent, and that's going to be clarified right here, I think, by redirect. Her problem was that she gambled too much. according to Tommy. $23,000 in 1 month. He might be right on that one. I'd have to check. This witness is, if you look up calm in the dictionary, this is the picture you see. Dino Kelly is the epitome of calm.
May I proceed? Yes. Thank you so much. All right. Well, that's there's a lot of things to cover. I'm going to try to do the best I can to track it. Okay, Detective.
It's making fun of the fact he was all over the place.
At the very beginning of cross-examination, there were some questions about Bartlett. Remember, and the 911 call and the timing. Do you remember all that?
I do.
Okay. There was some talk about collecting, reviewing the phone records and seeing Bartlett called at 8:33. Do you remember that?
8:33:36.
Okay. How long was the length of that phone call?
About 4.5 minutes. 270
seconds. So exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds, correct?
Yes.
If you add 4 minutes to 8:33, what do you get?
About 8:38.
Okay. So if you add the 4.5 minutes, you get to 8:38, right?
Yes.
That is not 8:45, correct?
It is not. 7 minutes shy.
But that's when the 911 call happens, right?
Correct.
Right. Speaking of records, you also collected phone records, Vonage records for the defendant, correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And they were included in records you submitted to our office, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Also, in relation to kind of the gun, there were some questions about the timing of these gunshots. The defendant said he didn't hear those shots because he was hard of hearing, correct?
Yes, and he had the radio turned up loud inside the Hyundai Tucson as he was parking.
Did you or someone else ever take a step inside that vehicle to hear the sound in the car?
Detective Mogg did.
Okay, was it abnormally loud?
No, he noted that the radio was being played at normal volume or reasonable volume.
Okay, so there were questions on cross-examination about a gunshot wound, a penetrating gunshot wound. Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay, so you weren't here for the testimony of Dr. Gavin, correct?
No, I was not.
So you didn't hear necessarily the manner in which he ordered or numbered the shots, correct?
No, I wasn't.
And when I say order, I just mean like the order of the shots as she examined them, not necessarily the sequence, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
She examined the wounds, not the shots in stand.
You're right, so my apologies. Publishing Exhibit 330. I could just turn off the light, couldn't I? I knew how to turn off the light.
Push the button on the left side.
Oh, look at that. Okay, great. All right. So,
This is the cartoon character that they made fun of.
looking at gunshot wound number 4, do you see that there?
I do.
It's your understanding that one came through on the left side of his body, right?
On the left side of his chest.
And it's a penetrating one, meaning it didn't exit out of his body, correct?
No, it was recovered on his right back, above the hip.
Okay, so that one is on the left side. Is that
Correct.
right? And with respect to this shot here, the one that you've seen you're probably there when the trajectory rods were being done, remember
Yes.
that? That one also is on the left-hand side. Left-hand
Pretty
side.
gross. We saw
Yes.
Okay. This second shot, your understanding is that second shot at the head also starts at the left-hand side, right? Up near the top of the head.
It does.
And it goes downwards, is that right?
Correct.
But it's also on the left.
Yes.
And then the fifth one, the one that enters the back of the elbow, that's also on the left-hand side of the body, right?
Yes, it's the back of the elbow and it exits the forearm.
So 4 of those are on the left. And then the only other shot that's actually not on the left side is at least marked as number 3. You remember one that enters kind of near the left side, near the abdomen, and then goes straight up and then kind of comes out near, near the collarbone-ish area here, right on the right side.
Exactly. That's the one I thought Mr. Orm was talking about when we were discussing it, is that shot.
Okay, so just to be clear, 4 of them from the left side, 1 of them in the middle, but that's number 3, correct?
Correct.
It's a computer drawing. It's a model. That's not actually his body.
There were questions about soot stippling. Do you remember that?
I do.
And there was talk about clothing and skin and whether stippling shows up on skin versus clothing, things of that nature. Do you remember that?
Correct.
Okay. You had said you wouldn't expect there to be stippling present on his abdomen. Why was that again?
Because he had a thick hooded sweatshirt on, and then he had that white Henley T-shirt on underneath, which was also thicker.
And essentially the hot powder, if it touches your exposed skin, that's what leaves the burn.
It's actually, stippling is the high velocity unburnt powder that's actually leaving little small contusions. It's leaving marks on there because it hits the skin so hard.
Okay. But as far as, you wouldn't expect it on clothing in terms of stippling because you're just going to see, what, defects in the clothing?
Possibly.
Let me ask you about gunshot residue. Is that a specific type of test or just more of a generalized test?
It's a generalized test. They'll take a swipe and then you can either have it tested or not.
And what is that supposed to catch if you're just in an area when gun residue is kind of floating in the air?
Absolutely. If you're in an enclosed car and someone fires a gun, you're going to have gunshot residue on you.
And just to be clear, I mean, you were there at the walkthrough, right?
Yes.
And the defendant says he shoots him when he's squared up on him in that hallway, right?
Yes.
And during interview number 1, I think he even indicates he was 3 feet or less from him.
Yes.
There were questions on cross-examination. Do you remember where he said, the defendant, he said he shot him while in the garage or nearby the garage. Do you remember those questions on cross?
I do.
Okay. When you went to the walkthrough, how is the defendant gesturing he shot him while kind of in the garage? Where is he aiming at that point during the walkthrough? What do you remember the defendant saying?
At Michael Miller's head in response to the loud noise that scared him.
Okay. So does the defendant indicate that when he is shooting him, Miller is on the ground?
Yes.
And he also talks about, I got scared because of the fire extinguisher, right? And it caused him to go bam, bam, right?
Because of the loud noise that scared him.
And just to be clear, what direction is Miller's feet pointing?
His feet are to the west, and his head is to the east in the garage.
So his head is near the car, right?
Yes.
Like the front hood of the car, and his feet are going back towards Sharon, right?
And his feet are going back towards where the water heater is on the west side of the garage.
Okay. And where is Mr. Randolph saying he is positioned? Where is he? What body part of Mr. Miller is he closest to?
He'd be closest to his head.
Well,
midsection.
Well, doesn't he say he's standing by his feet by the lip of the door doesn't he lean down and do this?
He stands in the threshold and fires. He said bam bam each time.
Okay, so Mr. Miller's feet, based on that walkthrough, are closest to Mr. Randolph.
It'd be.
And he's leaning down and he's shooting towards his head.
Yeah, it'd be just based on where he is in relation to the door frame. He could be, say, towards the back of his legs.
Okay. And this second gunshot starts at the top of his head.
Yes.
Which is closest to the front fender of the car.
Yes.
His head is opposite of his feet.
Yes.
And Mr. Randolph is standing by his feet.
Yes.
And that bullet is traveling back towards his feet.
Yes.
This one, number 1, enters the left side of his head.
Yes.
And it's going across his head.
Yes, across and upward.
And upward. But Mr. Randolph says he's standing essentially right at the lip of the hallway into the garage.
Right at the threshold, yes.
But that gunshot is going from left to right.
Yes.
But he's back behind the feet.
Yes.
And that is the area in the garage that he says he shoots this man.
Yes.
You were questioned about the fact you didn't interview a Mr. Hogue, is that correct?
Yes.
However, you did speak to 60 witnesses, correct?
Approximately, yes.
You subpoenaed bank records?
Yes.
You subpoenaed phone records?
Yes.
You subpoenaed gaming records?
Yes.
You collected surveillance video?
Yes, we did.
From a gas station and a casino?
Yes.
Love you all, RA.
You also interviewed the defendant twice and did a walkthrough with him?
Yes.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate your support.
There were questions on cross-examination about the garage light. Do you remember that on cross-examination?
Yes.
Do you remember counsel talking about how the defendant said that Mr. Miller pushed the garage door? Do you remember that?
That he thought he was going for the garage door opener.
And that was kind of my point. The defendant never said that Miller successfully opened the garage door, only that he was trying to.
Yes.
Because in order to turn that light on, you'd actually have to make contact with the garage.
Yes, you do. It's like a doorbell switch, and he had it mounted on the inside of the hallway.
And the defendant was interviewed not once, not twice, essentially 3 times, if you include the walkthrough.
Yes.
At no point does he say that Mr. Miller successfully touched the garage door, causing it to open.
No.
And then there were questions about the fact that the defendant said that when he kind of re-entered the house going into the hall, that he touched that light a second time after the garage door closed. Do you remember being asked that on cross?
Yes, when he first sees Sharon in the hallway.
And that's said during the walkthrough, isn't that right?
Yes.
And does he say that right? Okay. When does the defendant say he touched the garage light?
Right after he came in and saw Sharon laying there, he thought to maybe go get a neighbor, and he pushed he opened it and then closed it right then.
At this point in time in which he's describing this, has he encountered Mr. Miller at all?
No, it's right when he spotted Sharon on the floor.
So right when he walks in?
Yes.
So seconds after closing the garage door, he's now touching it a second time?
Yes.
So a matter of seconds?
Yes.
There were questions on cross-examination. Do you recall defense counsel asked you, and the defendant said he trusted Mr. Miller. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did he also refer to him as a bum?
Yes, he said it several times.
Did he also say this guy couldn't work to save his life?
Yes.
Yet he continued to hire him?
Yes.
And continued to pay him?
I presume so, yes.
For months?
Yes.
There were questions about the defendant saying he didn't think Mr. Miller had a drug problem. Do you remember that? In an interview he says, I don't think he had a drug problem, he drank.
No, yeah, initially I think he was confused about the question because he initially said, yes, he had a problem with drugs. And then he said he was talking about his drinking.
Okay, because he made the comment of he's black and he's buying a 40.
Right.
And then clarifies, I don't think he had a drug problem.
Yes.
Okay.
A little bit racist.
You said you didn't review the talks, is that right?
I never received it. Okay. I checked the file even recently and I don't have it.
So if the medical examiner testified that it was only a metabolite of cocaine, you wouldn't have any reason?
Objection, hearsay.
It's no different than how they've phrased this with respect to the medical examiner last time. Okay.
I'll allow it.
Since you weren't here for the medical examiner, if the medical examiner said it was only a metabolite of cocaine, you wouldn't have any reason to disagree with that?
No.
Do you remember there were questions about the cell phone that's sitting on Sharon's dead body?
The house phone, yes.
The house phone that's sitting on her dead body. Remember that?
Yes.
And there was this conversation about 9114. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Just to be clear, the defendant said he successfully calls 911, right?
Yes.
His discussion about being unsuccessful reaching 911 is prior to the last successful 911 call, right?
Yes.
And when the picture of her on her body is being taken, it's after all this is over, right?
Yes, and it stays connected all the way after.
So that's the condition of the phone after the last successful 911 call?
Yes.
I mean, Detective, in your years of experience using handheld telephones, have you ever nudged just a button while on the phone before?
Certainly.
It didn't turn off your phone, right?
I've actually activated buttons with my face sometimes, yes.
And we've heard the 911 call, right?
Yes.
And it goes for 18 minutes, right?
Yes.
Until finally someone from law enforcement turns it off.
Right.
Do you remember some questions about, it appears as when you looked at the scene, it appeared as if someone went through the drawers. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I think there was a question that was posed to you, like you've had some experience with people getting caught red-handed in the middle of kind of committing a burglary or something like that.
Yes.
Just to be clear, when you review the scene in those bags, it's lots of jewelry, right?
Yes, there was.
Okay. The defendant told you and your fellow officers that Miller was aware that he and Sharon were gone the week before up in Utah, right?
Yes. They'd just gotten back.
And did the defendant also say in his interviews that Miller knew that the night or the day after May 8th, they were leaving town to go back up to Utah?
Yes, Mr. Randolph even said that was the purpose of stopping at Funny's to top off the tank so they could leave in the morning.
At any point in time, during any of the 3 interviews, did the defendant say that he and Sharon took all of the jewelry inside the house and took it up to Utah the week before May 8th?
No.
At any point in time, during any of the 3 interviews, we'll include the walkthrough interview, did the defendant ever say, we plan to take all of the jewelry after May 8th up with us to Utah?
No.
So the jewelry, according to the defendant, still remained in the house before May 8th and after May 8th.
Yes.
But he had told Mr. Miller we're going to be gone during those 2 time periods.
Yes.
I have another question, though. Did Mr. Miller, did the defendant tell you during these 3 interviews, or at least at some point during the 3 interviews, that Sharon was up in Utah the week before May 8th?
Yes.
Did the defendant tell you at some point in these 3 interviews that Sharon planned to leave to go back up to Utah after May 8th?
Yes.
So May 8th was the day that she was in town.
Yes.
Do you remember there being a question on cross-examination about the 911 call and the fact that the defendant offered to help? Do you remember a question like that?
Yes.
Do you remember also being asked kind of a follow-up question that later on, I believe it's in interview number 2, that the defendant expresses to police that he's upset at the thought of his wife sitting on that cold floor? Do you remember those questions?
I do.
When you listened to the 911 call, does the defendant, when the fire department is asking him to provide CPR on his wife who's suffering from a gunshot wound, does he suggest or offer the idea, maybe I should go get the gun nearby Miller?
Yes, he did.
Does he, in fact, leave his wife, instead of doing CPR at that point in time, to go retrieve a gun?
Yes, just after 3 minutes in the call.
When he returns, when they are again asking to perform CPR, does he then offer, maybe I should go and lock the door? I'm going to go lock the door. Does he say that?
Yes, he did.
And essentially he stops doing, he doesn't do CPR and goes again for a second time, leaving his wife to go lock a door.
Yes, at about 3:51 in the call.
And then when he finally returns, and again they're asking him to, you need to perform CPR, does he offer the suggestion, well, how about if I go open the front door right now? Do you remember that?
He didn't specify front door.
Okay,
He
the
said
door.
the door. Yes, and that was just prior to starting compressions at 6 minutes and 30 seconds.
And the fire department tells him, no, you need to do this.
Yes,
And as you mentioned, 6 minutes have elapsed at this point.
over 6 minutes, yes.
Tommy did not testify at his first trial.
Do you remember there being a part of cross-examination where defense counsel asked you, well, the defendant said while he was in the house he could see Miller. It was, I think it might have been in reference to interview number 1. Do you remember that?
Interview number 1, he said he propped open the door so he could keep an eye on Miller, yes.
Okay. But when you look at that, what is the context in which when did he say, in that interview, when does he say he opens up the door so he can see Miller?
He just said, I can see him, he's on the floor.
But does he also say, and it's page 35,
Statement, counsel.
first statement. So, would it help refresh your recollection to see a copy of the first interview?
Certainly.
Okay. So, bottom of page 35. Start with this question here, and it's in the middle, counsel. Start with this question here. And I wanted you to read this question and answer, and this question and answer. And let me know if that refreshes your memory of the context of how he's able to see Mr. Miller. Okay. During that interview, does Detective Mogg ask him what he did after he fired multiple shots at Miller?
Yes.
What does he say he does?
He said that he slid the carpet underneath the door and propped the door open.
And he said so he would be able to see what was happening.
Yes.
So just to be clear, in that portion of the interview, this is after he has completed shooting at Miller entirely?
Yes.
Hallway as well as garage?
Said after those two shots, yes.
Okay, then he props the door open?
Yes.
It's in the aftermath?
Correct.
I think the evidence suggests he does do chest compressions. Not mouth to mouth, just chest compressions.
Do you remember there being a number of questions about the ski mask?
Yes.
There were some questions about sitting. You've had a chance to see that ski mask, right?
Yes, I have.
And you've been doing this for how many years as an officer?
At that point, I'd been in homicide for 5 years and been on the department for quite a bit longer than that.
Okay, you've seen clothing that's been shot by bullets, right?
Yes.
Did that ski mask have a single bullet hole in it?
No.
Did it have any apparent blood in it?
No, it did not.
Was there any blood transfer somewhere around the ski mask?
No, there was not.
Despite the fact there may have been some, I don't know, some like stitching or whatever, you don't see any bullet holes?
No.
I would imagine you checked though, right?
Yes, we did.
That would be a big deal, right?
Yes. A crime scene analyst with gloves on examined the ski mask, and there was no blood on the ground when the mask was picked up as well.
When he is interviewed these 2 times, as well as during the walkthrough, he does indicate that the mask is on his head. Maybe rolled up, but it's on his head, right?
Yes.
There was remember a question of, hey, you know, one reason you might want to take your mask off would be because maybe it's twisted and you can't see. Do you remember a question like that on cross?
Yes.
Detective, could another possibility take your mask off is there's no reason anymore to hide your identity?
Correct.
Because the job is done?
Yes.
Do you remember there being a question about, Detective, you would agree that one way to kind of leave a gun at a scene, or like not to leave evidence behind, is to leave a gun at a scene. Do you remember that question?
Yes, to get rid of the murder weapon.
Okay. Detective, wouldn't you agree another possible reason to...
Objection, leading.
It was.
I don't think even what I've said even suggests an answer.
Well, I don't know what the question is, so I'm going to let you finish it.
Okay.
You can lead.
Detective, would one possible explanation for dropping a gun would be your target is taken care of?
Yes.
Did the defendant in any of these 3 interviews with the police ever say that Michael Miller was waiting, gun pointed, the moment he walked into the hallway?
No.
There was a lot of questions about the second safe. Do you remember that?
I do.
At any point in time in these 3 interviews, did Mr. Randolph ever report to you that anything was taken out of that second safe?
No.
All right, this is the last witness of the prosecution's case, so this is redirect run right now, so they can't lead on this part.
Do you recall questions about the walkthrough and the defendant's droopy eyes at the beginning of the video?
I do.
I know that you acknowledged that his eyes were droopy at the beginning. Did you see the same level of droopiness throughout the interview?
No, I didn't. Only when Don Bell put the camera up on his shoulder to do the intro.
Do you ever recall the defendant crying or weeping during the walkthrough?
No.
Do you ever recall any moment where the defendant needed to emotionally collect himself from recounting what happened to his wife?
Not at all.
Do you recall whether or not the defendant said when talking about Sharon it was the grossest thing he'd ever seen in his life?
I do remember that.
And do you recall whether or not when discussing Sharon supposedly leaving shoes, him kind of slapping the wall and saying, "Motherfuck Sharon, Jesus," something like that?
Yes.
This is 1 week after she's passed.
Yes.
There was questions about, do you remember counsel asking you that Mr. Randolph had indicated to some extent he had a belief that Mr. Miller had committed some type of robbery. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Just to be clear, did the defendant indicate that he thought that robbery might have happened when Miller was a kid?
Yes.
And that he just happened to be standing in a store when his brother did the robbery?
Yes.
And then I think you even asked him as an adult, Mr. Randolph, are you aware of any robberies? And he says, no, I don't think so.
Yes.
And you did do a review. He didn't have any arrests here in Las Vegas?
No, he did not have an ID number. He's never been arrested in Las Vegas.
There were questions about the walkthrough and bringing in Randy McPhail. Do you remember that? There were a number of questions on that topic. Do you remember?
Yes.
You were asked, or maybe you provided an answer saying, you brought him in because you noticed that the spatter marks that McPhail looked at appeared to be distinctive.
Yes.
Do you remember, so you were there obviously the night of and then kind of a week later. Did it look the same, that area, that particular area?
No, it didn't. Again, over time, those marks had kind of spread out and became very distinctive. When we turned on the light in the hallway, you could just see them light up in the reflection of the hallway light, and so they were very distinctive at that point in time. And so I had called for a crime scene analyst to come out and document them because you could clearly see them then.
If you had seen them on the night of, would you have had them marked?
Well, we did. There's a certain extent. We had the impact that we had documented, the bullet fragments that had gone up onto the planter shelf, the tissue, the hair, all those things we had documented and retrieved. But the smaller areas is going to be cerebral spinal fluid, which is kind of an oily type substance, had really become distinctive on the wall, and I wanted to document them.
So that's kind of the point I wanted to get to. So those two fragments, right, and the strike, that's in the area where that cerebral fluid is.
Yes, the strike is about 8 foot up. Yes.
So that was an area you literally were processing on that night?
Yes.
Okay. And you just observed at a later time it became more pronounced, so then you brought someone in to do further documentation.
Correct.
There were questions, though, about a cleaning crew then coming in, though, after the night of these killings. Do you remember that?
Right.
I think there was a question about carpet had been removed, correct?
Yes.
But the spatters remained.
Yes, they did.
So this cleaning crew didn't wipe any of that up?
No.
Was the bullet strike repaired by the cleaning crew?
No.
So that even remained a week later, despite there being a cleaning crew?
Yes.
You were asked a question of, you would presume the walls were wiped down. I think you answered yes to the question, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but you weren't there, to be fair, you weren't there, right?
No, I just know the lower portions where there was blood on the door, jam blood on the door, those areas had been wiped down.
Okay, so those lower areas were.
Certainly.
But the upper areas apparently weren't because you processed it, right?
Correct.
And just to be clear, in the hallway, did you observe any blood in that hallway on night one?
Yes. Sharon Randolph's blood.
Sharon, okay, I'm sorry. In the area where Mr. Randolph says he shot Mr. Miller, do you see any blood there?
No blood.
And you were not alone when you did the walk of that area,
No.
correct? How many people were with you?
There was Sergeant Albee, Detective Mogg, Detective Hardy, Detective Long, Jeff Smith, the senior crime scene analyst, Gary Reed, the crime scene analyst supervisor, initially to look, and then it was later processed with fewer people.
Detective, if you and your fellow detectives or CSAs noticed something on night one in that portion of the hallway, would you have documented it?
Certainly.
There were questions, you remember questions about the clothing items and the sneakers nearby Mr. Miller's body?
Yes.
What was on Mr. Miller's feet that night?
A pair of size 9D cowboy boots.
This is presumably it's a jewelry heist. He's wearing cowboy boots.
Yes.
He had sneakers with him, but he opted for cowboy boots?
Yes.
Regarding the life insurance, you were asked that the documents were signed by Mrs. Randolph, and you indicated in the affirmative, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you weren't present when those documents are being signed, correct?
No, it wasn't.
So do you know who in fact prepared, filled out all the paperwork?
No, I don't.
Okay. The paperwork was signed in Utah, is that right?
Yes, in Ogden, Utah.
Where Mr. Randolph's family is from?
Yes.
Judge, I'd object to continue the meeting.
Okay, I'll rephrase. What year were those policies signed in?
I believe in 2006.
Okay, was that before or after she was legally married?
Before.
There was a question about, and you learned Sharon's wages paid for the premium. Did that apply to the Boston Mutual policy only?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the $22,000 one, correct?
Correct.
That did not include the $200,000 or the $100,000 policy?
No.
Or the $10,000 Stonebridge?
No.
There were questions about the fire extinguisher. Do you recall being asked how Mr. Miller's body was lying next to the fridge?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall the defendant saying during his walkthrough that he in fact rolled him over into that position?
Yes, and you could tell based on the blood pooling that he had moved to the new position.
Thank you. Have an easy day. Looks great.
Questions about his girlfriend, Mr. Miller's girlfriend, having a vehicle, something along those lines. During your investigation, was there any reported undeclared vehicle sitting outside the Rancho Santa Fe residence?
No.
And there were questions at the end about Sharon, defendant talking about shortcomings. Sharon's gambling, he's too cocky. And then I think the last question was that Miller didn't have a steady job. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you recall the answer wasn't that, but in fact, simply he didn't work?
Yes.
Page 48, counsel.
Page 48, counsel.
Of course and don't. I have no further questions for this witness.
Yes,
Very good redirect there. After Cross had looked to be floundering the way they had gone all over the place. The drama that was visual on the screen with Cross did not match.
Detective, just so it's clear.
Or the answers.
In his very first statement, recorded statement on May 9th, starting in 12:30 a.m., he is asked, do you fire any shots in the garage? And he answers, yeah.
Yes.
So there's, oh, I'm sorry, page 56, it's the last question.
And it's interview number 1.
That's correct. Okay. Let me let them get there, okay?
Page 19, you said?
No, page 56.
I'm sorry.
The very last question and answer.
This witness has been on the stand a long time.
And so, just so they're there by now, he said, yeah, when asked, did you fire any shots in that garage? Right?
Yes.
So within hours of this incident, it's fair to say that Thomas Randolph is saying, I fired shots in that garage, right?
Yes.
Mr. Hamner asked you about the fact that Sharon and Tommy had been away to Utah for the week before, right?
Yes.
And that although they were celebrating Mother's Day at the charcoal room, they were again going to Utah, right?
Yes.
And you were aware, or at least you understood, that Thomas Randolph was going to deposit, had some money, was going to deposit some money in the bank, right?
That's what he said.
And he was with Michael Miller, right?
Yes.
And that he didn't make it to the bank, right?
Yeah, he said he missed his turn, so he didn't go to the bank.
He complains to you, Thomas Randolph, that you guys didn't find a large amount of cash that he had around the house, hidden around the house.
And even on him, that we didn't find the cash that he had on him.
Okay. And he was going to Utah the next day.
Yes.
He complained a lot.
You learned that Michael Miller had been involved in house sitting for the Randolphs, right?
I know there was some contemplation of him house sitting, even that Mr. Miller requested that a note or a note be given to him so that if anybody came by, he would be able to justify his being there.
Okay.
I don't know that he ever actually house sat for them.
You said that there were chest compressions done. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
Now, with regard to hiding identity in a mask is used by robbers, burglars to hide their identity. Fair?
Yes.
If the intent is to shoot Sharon Randolph, you don't need to hide your identity from her, right? Because she's not going to live through this. So, isn't that right?
I don't know why he would have the mask on when he shot her.
Right. Other than he's committing a burglary, right? Right?
Or he's shooting somebody he's very familiar with and he didn't want to have perceived.
I'm going to object and I'm going to ask the witness to be allowed to finish his answer. Mr. John, we need to give him the bench before you go on.
Sir,
Can you finish his answer?
He did finish.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't.
No, he did. Okay. To my knowledge, were you finished, Detective O'Kelly?
I don't know. We were kind of talking over each other. Your
Oh,
Honor.
I thought you finished. I apologize.
No, or that he is shooting somebody.
Detective, could you answer my question?
Well, no. The ruling is that he gets to finish his answer.
And he said he was.
No, he never answered that question. Detective O'Kelly, had you finished? Or?
I had not finished, Your Honor. We were talking over each other, and then Mr. Hamner said something, so I stopped talking.
Okay. What's the remainder of the answer, Detective?
Or that you're going to shoot somebody that you're very familiar with, and you don't want them to see your face when you do it.
Just in case when you die, you would be able to identify the person? Because
No.
if you're dead, if the plan is to shoot somebody dead in your own home, they're not going to be able to identify you later on. Right? Fair?
No, they wouldn't be able to identify you.
Wow.
A lot of burglars wear masks. Isn't that fair?
I don't know.
In your experience, do robbers and burglars wear masks?
I would say robbers more often than burglars. Burglars go into places that are unoccupied and are likely not to be seen.
And there are lots of cameras that people have around, right?
More so now than then, yes.
And in fact, throughout your career, when a homicide happens, you go to neighbors, to businesses around there and look for cameras, right?
We did then, and now you're finding Ring doorbell cameras, you're finding all kind of surveillance cameras.
Mr. Randolph said it was the grossest thing he ever saw. It was the grossest thing he seen. It was gross, right?
He did, multiple times.
You've seen the pictures of Sharon Randolph's face.
Yes.
Right? After she's shot, right?
Yes.
It's horrible, isn't it?
It is.
That wound to the back of her head is horrible, right?
It is.
You would agree with me that Thomas Randolph told you he loved her, right?
He told us he did, yes.
And that she was the best thing that ever happened to him, right?
Yes.
And that if Thomas Randolph came from holding hands with her and rolled her over and saw his wife looking like that, it has to be about as horrible as it can be in life. Isn't that fair? To roll your wife over.
I'd agree that everything you just said is one of the most horrible things I've ever heard.
You said that Miller had not obtained any criminal record in the whole 5 months that he had been here. Right? Whole 5 months he'd been here.
We didn't find a record on him.
But you know he committed murder while he was here, right?
He did.
And we know that he was stealing while he was here, right?
Again, we never spoke to the owner of the contents of that wallet that didn't belong to him. And we know that he had a cell phone that did not belong to him.
And we know that he had that beautiful ring in his left pocket that most certainly didn't belong to him, right?
I'd agree with that.
And that makes him a thief, doesn't it?
I do. I agree with that.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but in the boots, cowboy boots, did it have the name Philippe? Did you ever notice that?
I know there was writing on it. I don't know if it's...
Philippe.
I don't remember that said.
You don't remember? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember whether Sharon Randolph had given Michael Miller those boots?
That was my understanding.
I'm going to make a soundbite.
Now, with regard to this hallways,
I've got it recorded, but it'll take a minute to trim it down.
there was absolutely no arrows put up on May 9th, May 8th of arrows showing where all this matter was.
No, we didn't.
And your statement is that it was there, it just became more clear when you came back a week later.
Yes.
Okay, well, crime scene analyst Smith, right, he was there.
Yes, he was.
And it's his job to record and collect and preserve the evidence, right?
It is.
You don't want somebody coming in, hazmat coming in, and a whole bunch of these people, or one of them, or two of them, cleaning the area up, and then you come back when it's more visible. That doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense to fail to preserve a crime scene or evidence from it if you can see it. Is that fair?
If you can see it, and you can document it, and you can photograph it, and you can recover it, yes.
And that was not done on either the 8th or the 9th, was it?
On that material, on the upper wall, no. Or the two shell casings, we found them on the 15th as well.
Nothing further.
Very briefly. This is, start on that last one. That upper material, did you observe it? Did you observe the cerebral fluid on May 8th in the early morning hours of May 9th?
No.
Okay, so if you had seen it, you would have documented it at that time.
Yes.
Let's go to the top. There was talk about, he indicated he was depositing money. During those interviews, does the defendant also say that he's trying to withdraw money as well?
Yes.
So he kind of, it's not equivocal, he kind of goes back and forth about whether he was depositing or withdrawing, is that right?
Right, moving money around, yes.
But let's just assume he has all of this money on him. Does the defendant state that when he walked in the door, Michael Miller's waiting right there to blow him away?
No.
And just to be clear, Mr. Miller presumably abandoned the .38 that he killed his wife with?
Yes.
And then struggled to produce another weapon in relation to the defendant?
Yes.
At least that's according to the defendant.
It's according to one statement. The first statement, he said he had the gun in his right hand.
Okay. There were questions about, there's cameras and neighbors around. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Typically, those cameras, where are they typically located? Are they located sometimes in the front of people's houses?
On the garage, on the doorbell camera, yes.
So if you were to exit out the garage, you'd have to open up the garage?
Yes.
And then walk out to all those cameras?
Correct.
And did the defendant say that was the direction of the garage is the general area that Mr. Miller is walking towards when he encounters him?
That he was going towards the garage?
Yes.
Yes.
But there's a back door that was open?
Yes.
Lastly, there were questions about how the defendant indicated that, you were asked, didn't he indicate that Sharon was the best thing that ever happened to him?
Yes.
But he also indicated that he openly cheated on her.
Yes.
No further questions.
Anything else, Michelle? No. Do the ladies and gentlemen of the jury have any questions for this witness?
Yeah, we've got a few questions.
Name and your jury.
Francis, thanks for gifting the membership. That one went to Ohio Mama. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Ohio Mama. All right. The water pitcher is still blocking our, making our view semi-obstructed of Tommy, but he does definitely look quite alert today. Probably not very happy either. I don't think I'd be happy if I were a defendant, and that's how the cross went. But that final comment of the best thing that ever happened to Tommy was Sharon, but he cheated on her, and everybody knew it. Wow, zing. It is jury question time. We love this part of the trial. We love states that allow jurors to ask questions at the end of witness testimony, and this court here in Nevada is one of them. And they've been better and better. The questions seem to be better and better, and we get more and more as it goes along. This witness has been on the stand for 2 days, so look at all. He's gathering like a ream of papers. Headphones off. Tommy doesn't want to hear this, I guess. So many papers. Bailiff's got them already. Picked up the last one. Hands them to the judge. Judge is going to read them first, and then hand them to the attorneys to review. The attorneys have the opportunity to object. To basically the same way they would object if one of the the opposing counsel was asking a question that they didn't think was fair or asked appropriately or in the right manner. So they're going to look at these questions and see if they're fair questions, even if they don't like them. As long as the question's fair, they'll get to ask it. Hopefully, they'll be insightful. Quite a few here. Why did Tommy have a tape measure? He had a tape measure on him when he was arrested, like in his pockets. Maybe he wanted to get his story right. So he wanted to measure the distances between things, so he could say it was about like this, and then the evidence would show up exactly as like that. Going through the ream of papers, see if they it'll take a little bit. These are going to be good. These are going to be great. Now we know that Tommy does not like this witness. We knew that from the interrogation video where he flat out told him back in 2008 or whenever it was, that he didn't like him. Watching the body language a little bit. Let me just zoom in on my camera so I can see a little better. Small chat with the bailiff. This is the longest it's taken to deliberate over jury questions so far in this court case. This witness needs to buy himself a ticket in the World Series of Poker. He would go far. He is completely unflappable. His face is completely blank, even when he's playing a zinger. Is he hard of hearing? Yes, he is hard of hearing. So he's asked the court for some sound amplification headphones that allow him to hear the sound in court a little louder. You can turn the volume up. We've also seen a witness or two. The one witness that we refer to as Santa Claus because he looks like Santa Claus also was wearing headphones. They're available to people in court, observers as well as participants.
Okay, Detective O'Kelly? Did you or the CSAs find any blood on either car in the garage?
No, we did not.
Blood on either car in the garage? No.
Do you ever recall Mr. Randolph telling you if he usually was the driver when going out on dates with Mrs. Randolph?
No, he didn't indicate one way or the other.
Was TR the
Why
driver?
were many items not impounded by police?
Well, even though, and I don't like to admit this publicly, so don't tell anyone, but even though I was absolutely sure that there were things at the scene that didn't add up and didn't make sense, there was still a possibility that I was wrong and that those things could be explained. One of the reasons for doing the walkthrough is so that he could come back and maybe explain some of those things, right? I didn't think that was true at the time, and so there were decisions on impounding certain things like Mr. Randolph's clothing. So you have to do what's, almost like a return on investment. What do I think I'm going to get from Mr. Randolph's clothing? Sharon's blood, Mike Miller's blood, gunshot residue, right? So if I'm at the scene and I think there's a possibility that I'm wrong, yes, but I don't believe that I am, do I want Mr. Randolph to think that we bought into what had been staged, to continue his cooperation, right? So yes, it's a possibility I was wrong, but I didn't think so, and so I didn't want to do things that were going to make him think that we didn't believe it.
So it was strategic.
Right? So the decision was made not to impound his clothing so that he would think, all right, they bought what was at the house. They bought it lock, stock, and barrel, and I'm okay. So when we continued our conversation with him, and when Detective Mogg reached out to him, he was still willing to come and now show us physically at the scene, contextually, how it happened, and there was still that possibility that he might have a reasonable explanation for the things that we saw not only at the scene, but that we verified at autopsy with the wound pattern and the trajectory of the bullets. I don't think that happened. I was even more convinced of what we had that night after the walkthrough.
That was an amazing answer.
Did Mr. Randolph tell you that he enjoyed driving?
I don't remember him saying that. No.
Did you ask to have the gloves tested for gunpowder?
No.
In the June 3rd, 2008 interview, Thomas mentions he had the 38 millimeter gun with him when he dropped off Mike, the same gun that killed Sharon. Do you ever remember him saying that he had any guns with him when he left with Sharon to dinner at the Santa Fe?
Well, the 38, you're thinking 38 millimeter. It's actually the 9 millimeter by 18. The Makarov is what he said he had earlier. And then there was some discussion about, if you recall, whether or not he had the gun on him when he was in the casino. So, and he was saying that he didn't have it on him in the casino. Not because he wasn't willing to do that, but he just didn't have it on him at the time.
Did Mr. Randolph tell you if he had two 38 millimeter revolvers?
No, I mean, the 38 revolver that was in the drum room, he said came from the clock that was hanging on the wall. It's hanging upside down, and then you close it, actually says place gun upside down, so that's what it's for, is to conceal the gun. That's where the 38 came from, and then it did belong to Mr. Randolph. The other revolver came from a basket in the master bedroom or from a drawer in the master bedroom, which, there was an admission that Mr. Miller knew where both of those firearms were located.
Is there video surveillance of when Tom Randolph drops off Mike by the Fiesta Casino or the area he mentions in interview 2?
No.
While you conduct crime scene investigations, do you usually have a body camera?
No.
Did you have one, and if so, was it on?
No.
Did the officers on the scene have body cameras turned on?
No. This is pre-body camera.
The night of May 8, 2008, or a week later after you went back, did you ask any neighbors if they had any outdoor camera footage showing Mike Miller's arrival, the Randolph's arrival, and when first responders arrived?
That night, the neighborhood canvass was done by Detective Long. I don't know if he had anybody else assist him, like maybe from patrol, but all of those questions would have happened. And again, this is kind of predates the prevalence of those types of cameras that we're finding on pretty much almost every residence now.
In your opinion, where would a person have to be standing and shooting for the shell casings to land in the areas they were found?
Oh, that's a good one.
The first shell casing that is in the hallway, just inside the threshold, that round would have been fired near the doorway, more than likely, and bounce around inside the hallway. The shell casings that were found a week later in the toolbox and over by the milk jug or water bottle, right over by the water heater, we believe came off of the refrigerator. So the arm was extended into the garage. The shell casing ejected to the right and went off the refrigerator and ended up over there. The shot that Mr. Randolph describes firing into Mr. Miller as he's in the threshold, aiming the gun downward, would also have come off of the refrigerator and ended up over where we have the shell casing on the west side of the Hyundai Tucson. That bullet flattened out and was underneath the right rear passenger area of the Hyundai Tucson.
Was Mike Miller's girlfriend identified and interviewed?
I know we had a name for her, but we don't have an interview with her, and I never spoke to her.
State, do you have any follow-up based on the juror question?
Just one very briefly. Why was no GSR testing done on the gloves?
Because they were involved in a shooting, and that was demonstrably so, and so you're going to get gunshot residue. There's no question.
Okay, so it sounds like you just presumed he was involved in the shooting, therefore there was no need to test the gloves.
Right.
Or he was shot at. I guess conversely, he was also shot at as well.
Yeah, everything in that area is going to have gunshot residue on it.
So whether he's receiving bullets or shooting bullets, you're expecting GSR to be there.
Yes.
And is it able to tell you timing or directionality or who's shooting at who?
No.
Okay.
Any follow-up, Mr. Owen?
You have previously stated that a case where it lands when it's ejected is unpredictable. Fair?
Specifically where it lands, yes.
Because they bounce all over the place.
Yes.
People can kick them.
People can kick them.
You said, when we're talking about the .38 caliber that comes out of the clock and is used to murder Sharon Randolph, it's Sharon's gun, isn't it?
That's my understanding. According to Mr. Randolph, it's her gun.
You also said that from that night, when you were asked by one of the jurors in a question about why you didn't preserve evidence, one of the things you told us just now is that you didn't believe Mr. Randolph. Things weren't adding up, so you wanted to keep him talking, and so you didn't preserve certain information or certain evidence. Isn't that what you told us?
I said that I could be wrong about my impressions at the scene. There was still a possibility that I was wrong, and then if with that cooperation he came back, he may be able to explain what happened at the scene contextually and be able to show why those things that I had a problem with were the way they were.
So that is one of the reasons you failed to preserve evidence? Is that what you were telling the jury?
It's not a failure to preserve evidence. It's what you expect to get from that evidence versus what I would be, if I was to take again, for example, his clothing. You know, and we've done that before, where now you put somebody in what we call a bunny suit, you know, where they're sitting there in the interview room, their clothing's taken from them. And I saw that as a possibility to then have Mr. Randolph think that we weren't believing his story at all. And so we wouldn't see that level of cooperation that we continue to have.
Detective O'Kelly, that includes a safe in a closet, that big safe?
I never saw the safe. We're also dealing with the fact...
So you never saw that safe? So you didn't take anything or preserve that or any pictures of it on the night in question, correct?
Other than the one picture that you have where you can see a portion of the safe.
That concludes recross-examination.
Any follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
No, Your Honor.
Do the ladies and gentlemen of the jury have any further questions for this witness? Okay, you can write your question.
More questions from the jury. They're not done. Now, I'm not sure if the jury here on the second round of questioning has to limit their questions to the scope of the redirect and the recross. I don't know if they have to, but this is part 2. We'll see if they ask questions that are related or not. We'll see what happens there. His calm and measured responses make the defense attorney seem dramatic to the point of unreliability. Yes, and you also saw, even though the defense lawyer was asking the questions, you saw how antsy he was every time he's given an answer. He wants a yes or no, but he wasn't asking yes or no questions. And the way the answers were coming out, it was actually, I think, hurting the defense. And so even though he's trying to get an answer, every time he talks to him, this witness is just going around him, end goal. It was good. That's good exchange there. How many bites of the apple did both sides get? There's no limit, but the scope narrows. So the questions, and I don't know if the scope narrows for the jury. That's what I'm getting at. If this were just direct and cross, and then redirect and recross, as you go through each one of those, they are supposed to limit their questions to what came out in the previous, exchange. So typically after the first questioning, you've got a big direct and big cross, and then a much smaller redirect and recross, and then even more restricted as it goes on. But we've seen it go 3 or 4 times. We'll see if the jury sticks to that as well. Okay. The lawyer should let the jury take over. It actually took a long time for this jury to get in the rhythm of asking questions. It was quite a few. It took a while for the first question to come through. I think now the jury is asking questions.
Did you search any of the 2 vehicles, and if so, did you find any guns or any valuable evidence?
No.
Okay. Any follow-up, Mr. Hammond? Nope. Mr. Warner? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, do you have any further questions for this witness? Okay, seeing no response, Detective O'Kelly, you are excused. Thank you very much for your testimony over the last 2 days.
Last 2 days.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our afternoon recess briefly. During this recess, you must not discuss or communicate with anyone, including fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. You must not read, watch, listen to news or media accounts or commentary about the case. You must not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. You must not make any investigation, test, or theory in the case, read through any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. And you must not form or express any opinion regarding this case till it is finally submitted to you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 3:15. We'll be in recess until 3:30.
All rise for the jury.
Okay, so we're going to skip ahead just a little bit. Because we don't have to sit here and watch this break. There we go. All right, break time's over. Yeah, someone was hung up on the cars. Lots of questions about the cars. We had questions about him driving, about was Tommy the driver or was Sharon the driver? I wonder if they thought for some reason that maybe Tommy had gone in the house first and then waited for Sharon to come in. I don't think that's the case. I don't think Tommy, with what we know about Tommy, I don't think he would let other people be the driver for him. That's just a... I need to... Oh, yes. I forgot my sound I'm supposed to do when we fast forward. There, we just jumped through time. Thank you, Goodman Law Firm, for that. Nicole, appreciate the reminder. Prosecution arrest now. Yes, we're going to see that the prosecution's arrest, that's the final witness. Let me jump ahead. Let's see where we're at.
Mr. Michael Hogue.
Oh, I jumped too far ahead. I'll let you know what's happening next. Here we go. Michael Hogue, the name sounds familiar because he's the guy whose driver's license was in Mike's wallet.
May the record reflect your back on the record of C-250966, stating out of Thomas Randolph. Mr. Randolph was present with his attorneys, deputy attorneys on behalf of the state. Do both parties give this defendant's pleasure?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
State next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the state rests.
State rests.
Defense, do you have any witnesses you'd like to present?
Your Honor, we at this time would call Mr. Michael Hogue. Your Honor, the state has agreed to admit for the admission of proposed Exhibit V as in Victor and W.
That's correct.
Okay, check this guy out. He shows up hat in hand.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Sort of like a deer in the headlights. He's like no idea why he's here.
If you could state and swear your name for the record, please.
Michael Hogue, M-I-C-H-A-E-L-H-O-G-U-E.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Orr, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Hogue, do you have some felony convictions?
I do.
The last 10 years?
No.
No?
The last 10?
Yes, sir?
No.
This isn't going well.
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm sorry.
And why don't you tell the jury what your felony convictions for in the last 10 years are?
Those felonies.
Assault, a deadly weapon, great bodily injury.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 7 years since I paroled.
Burglary?
Yeah, I do have a burglary charge.
Mm-hmm.
Possession of controlled substance?
Oh, there was that one as well. Yep.
Is that here in the state of Nevada?
Yeah.
Is that a yes?
You can see why I'd forget. There's just small ones.
Mr. Hogue, I'm going to show you what has been admitted as Exhibit W.
And sir, you can see that on the screen right there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Do you recognize that?
Yeah, it's my license.
Is that you in the picture?
Yes, sir.
I'm also going to show you what's being admitted as Exhibit V as in Victor. Do you see that same driver's license?
Yes.
Thank you much. Do you see a Costco card?
Yes.
Did you lose this driver's license?
I did.
How did that happen?
It was a bus ride home, a Greyhound bus from L.A. back to here.
And that was before 2000, May 8th of 2008, correct?
Objection leading.
Do you know when it was?
I don't.
And it was on a Greyhound bus?
I believe so.
What do you recall about it?
It was a bus. It had wheels. There was a driver. A lot of people sitting there.
Falling asleep on the way home and waking up with my backpack gone.
The wheels of the bus go around.
You were coming home on a bus and you fell asleep, and when you woke up, your backpack was gone.
Yes, sir.
And you had ID and other objects in there?
Yeah.
You didn't give anybody permission to take that from you, did you?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's being admitted as States 334.
I like this guy. I really like this witness. He's got.
Did you give that human being, do you recognize that human being?
No.
Did you give a person named Michael Miller permission to have your driver's license?
No.
Dude's like, I have no idea who all you
Did you also have a food stamps card?
I did.
And was that taken as well?
It was.
Did you have anybody ever come and ask you questions like I'm asking you today?
I did.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I don't think he was expecting that answer. Did you ever have anyone come and ask you questions like I'm asking you today? I did. The guy's like, does not compute. I thought the whole thing was that they never went out and interviewed. Look at this. Was that a wink from Tommy? Did you get a wink and a nod from Tommy? Do you guys see that? Oh, and now he's crying about it. I just can't with him. All right, this witness is the whole reason he's called is because it's his picture on the driver's license. It's his card. We have no idea. Nobody has any idea. I'm sure this is going to be brought out either on direct or on cross. How the card got to Mike's wallet, or if it was this guy's wallet and Mike had the guy's wallet.
Mr. Hogue, did people you believe to be detectives come out and talk to you about this in approximately 2008? Yes or no?
Yes.
Could you give us a description of those two? How many were there?
2.
Could you give us a description of what these 2 individuals look like, if you know?
I don't know. I wouldn't be comfortable giving a description.
That concludes direct examination.
What did they get out of this guy? We already know it's his license. We have his picture on it.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good, thank you. You described that you had your backpack on the Greyhound bus, and if I understood you correctly, it was going from LA to Vegas?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so back home?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Sorry, you just have to say yes or no.
Okay.
Do you have any recollection of when this was? Like was it, after Christmas or maybe near Easter? Any kind of time frame you can give us?
I believe it was summertime.
Summertime of 2007?
I don't even know.
Okay, fair enough. So, I know it's a long time ago, but as you sit here with us this afternoon, it sounds like you remember it as summer, but maybe unclear on the year? Or?
Yeah, I'm unclear on the year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Fair enough. And then I assume you were on the bus ride alone because you weren't with someone who saw it?
Yes.
Did you, when you noticed that your belongings were gone, did you report it to Greyhound? Or
yeah, I asked the bus driver and talked to the bus station and kept calling them. Nothing was ever turned in.
Okay. There was not a lot of follow-up investigation?
Yeah, they didn't try to find it.
Okay. But you made an effort to see if you could get your stuff back?
I did.
Okay. You don't know anything about what happened on Rancho Santa Fe Drive on May the 8th of 2008, do you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That picture that Mr. Oram put up of the African-American man, have you ever seen him before?
No, ma'am.
Do you even know his name?
Well, just because they told me.
Right, but that was the
prior to
question.
that, no.
Prior to that, did you know his name at all?
No.
Do you know the name Sharon Randolph or Thomas Randolph? Nothing like that? And when were you contacted to be here with us this afternoon?
Last month, I believe.
Last month? Okay. And then I guess you don't have any idea, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have any idea how your identification ended up in someone's pocket that is involved in our case, do you?
It was stolen.
But do you know that he's the one that stole it? Because
I can't say that.
You can't say that, right?
Yeah.
Because you have no idea. Okay. Thank you, sir.
You follow me, Sean? Ladies and gentlemen, the jury have any questions?
Oh, please ask him a question.
Okay.
Oh.
Seeing no response, sir, you are excused. Thank you very much for your testimony here today. Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd be like,
Do you think you may call your next
what'd you do in
witness?
California? What were you doing?
That's called Jeremy Stafford.
Is that surfing? What's he got? He got parking validation? What does he need there? He's got some paperwork. Like, can you sign my paperwork? Hat's on, he's out the door. Dude's so over this. But I have no idea why I was in there. That was the weirdest thing that's ever happened to him, other than his backpack disappearing on a Greyhound bus. And when you pay like $20 for a Greyhound bus ticket across the country, you're not going to get Greyhound's crack team of investigators searching for your lost backpack. Really, they'll take your report and they'll give you a case number, but don't expect to see your backpack again. Very little else will happen there.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. You could state and spell your name for the record, please.
Excuse me, ma'am?
You could state and spell your name for the record.
Jeremy
What'd you call
Stafford,
me?
Jeremy.
What'd you call me?
Stafford.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon, sir.
What do you do for a living?
I'm currently the military and law enforcement manager for Mossberg Firearms, and
Shotgun
I
company.
also provide expert testimony for Titan Consulting.
Okay. Mossberg Firearms is a relatively large and well-known distributor of firearms here in the United States, right?
Yes, sir.
Good ones, too.
Predominantly known for shotguns. You agree with
Yes,
that?
sir.
Okay. And in fact, you mentioned law enforcement and military. Are you responsible for the Mossberg counts related to shotguns that are provided to law enforcement and military?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Prior to that, I want to talk to you about what you did before you were in that role. First of all, how long have you been doing that with Mossberg?
About 7 months, sir.
Okay. Prior to that,
New
did
on
you
the
have a
job.
military career?
Yes, sir.
What branch?
United States Marine Corps and Marine Corps Reserve.
And how long were you in the Marine Corps and Marine Corps Reserve?
14 years, sir.
Oh, that's
Okay.
awesome.
What
Thanks
rank
for
were
your
you at
service.
the time you discharged?
Staff Sergeant.
Okay. Did you see combat?
Yes, sir.
While you were in the military, did you ever receive any commendations?
Yes, sir. Numerous commendations.
Did you ever receive any awards from the Marine Corps?
Yes, sir.
And specifically, which one?
My highest being the Bronze Star with a V for valor in combat, sir.
Okay. That's
no slouch.
Is
That's
a
a serious
distinction that is
reward.
given to people that display bravery and valor in a live combat situation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you departed from the Marine Corps, did you work in law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury about that?
I spent 25 years on the Los Angeles Police Department, 9 years of which was the department firearms subject matter expert.
Okay. Did you retire from the
25.
LAPD?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In your role in the LAPD, you mentioned that you were the subject matter expert on firearms. What did that role consist of?
There was several fingers coming off of that hand, sir. So on one hand, I was in charge of updating all the policies and procedures. I wrote all the lesson plans. I had a fairly large part in all of the testing and evaluation of new equipment, firearms, and ammunition, things of that nature. And I also served as a fact finder and an advisor for command staff in areas of policy and training regarding firearms.
Okay, specifically as it relates to firearms, it sounds like, I was just taking a few notes while you were answering there, that you were responsible for testing, evaluation, training, and authoring essentially department policies related to the use of firearms in the line of duty.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The last thing you mentioned there, you were a fact finder. What does that mean?
So anytime there was a critical incident or use of force involving a firearm, there were several different steps of the investigation. Rather than being an investigator, what I would do is I would gather the facts from what the investigators were finding. I would present those
to the command staff, and that would allow them to make determinations on whether or not policy was going to be influenced by these things, or to provide that information to the chief if there was discipline that was going to be involved. So,
okay. I don't mean to interrupt you, but jury's heard a lot of information from investigators in this case, not really your role in that capacity your last 9 years with the LAPD, right?
Correct, sir.
More of a administrative role?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned the term critical incident involving firearms. Like in layman's terms, is that when an officer or a detective or employee of the LAPD discharges their duty weapon?
Yes, sir. An officer-involved shooting.
How many officer-involved shootings were you involved in as part of this role?
Over 40.
Do you know an exact number?
I don't. I would have to go through, and at the time I didn't think I'd be doing this, so I didn't take notes and keep a tally.
Several dozen. You do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In addition to your work with the LAPD and in the military, have you authored periodicals, information, papers related to firearms and the firearms industry?
Yes, sir. I was up until very recently, I was the handgun editor for Guns and Ammo magazine, and several of the other related sister publications. And I am also the host, or was the host, of a television show called The Best Defense, which dealt with the legal, moral, and technical aspects of self-defense.
Okay. For those of
I guess he's an expert, but it's
us
a
in the
weird
room
set
that
of
may not
qualifications.
know, Guns and Ammo, is that a magazine?
Yes, sir.
And
Good
is
one.
it the
I read
largest
it.
firearms-related magazine in the world?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very
when you said
seldomly.
editor, related to handguns, anything in that publication involving handguns during your tenure there, did you have some part in it?
If I didn't, it's because I chose not to, sir. So work would come in, and I would either decide to take it or I would pass it on.
Okay. Did you write?
Yes, sir.
Did you edit?
Yes, sir.
Did you consult?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you mentioned Best Defense. That was a TV show on the Outdoor Network?
Yes, sir.
And it related specifically to self-defense, defense of others, defense of home?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to talk to you about some of your education, training, and experience prior to your testimony today. Do you have any idea how many hours that you've accumulated
They arrived today.
Instructional hours in use of force situations, dynamic use of force situations, shooting incidents, things like that?
Specific to that area, I would guess it to be somewhere right around 500, 600 hours, right in there.
Okay. And your total amount of hours training related to the use of firearms and use of force, would you say that's in the thousands?
It's in the I couldn't even begin to.
Okay. Could you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury some of the instruction, tactical training, use of force hours that you've accumulated?
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things that I did was I was a member of the very early original handgun instructor course. It was a course that I eventually rewrote because I went out and I took other training to bring it back. So that would include training up at Gunside Academy, training at the Surefire Institute, which is a low-light, force-on-force, heavy training company, Firearms Training Associates, Bill Rogers Shooting School, which is renowned and is considered one of the most difficult shooting schools in the world, where it involves not just shooting, but also a lot of decision-making, things of that nature, so that we could bring it back and kind of collate that and improve the training environment at the Los Angeles Police Department.
Okay. Did you go to the LAPD Supervisor School?
Yes, sir.
As well as the United States Marine Corps Urban Tactical School?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with the term perceptual distortion?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
So
there's the good
perceptual distortion is it's a layman term for what is clinically known as cognitive distortion. And it's a little bit easier for people to understand the perceptual distortion, because what happens is in any high stress critical incident, you have what Dr. Epstein had, in one of his studies, had noted is you have your rational and your experiential
Epstein?
mind.
Hang on. We've got Will Rogers School of Shooting and Acting, and Dr. Epstein is writing. I don't know. There's been an objection. I'm not sure what the objection was. We're going to talk it over. I do want to say a shout out right now to Bite Me, Rebecca, and Buttercup. Rebecca shared with me that everything went well medically. She's back home and healing up and resting and watching on TV. So shout out to you. Hope recovery goes great, and look forward to having you back with full strength. So thank you very much. Yeah, that's the thought. Dr. Epstein or Jeffrey Epstein. We obviously don't want to get too political here, but he's dropping names without laying the foundation for him. And honestly, this witness, I listened to his credentials yesterday when they first gave him, and I listened to him again, and it sounds like me writing my resume when I was like applying for my first job, and I'm listing everything I've ever done and tried to make it sound as important and big and prestigious as I possibly can, and possibly inflating it just a little bit. He's done a lot. He served in the military. The Star of Valor, yeah, Bronze Star with Valor, great. That's amazing. That's awesome. Kudos to that. 25 years in police officer, that's awesome. Okay, that's a long time to be in that. But it sounds like within his service as police specifically, he was sort of like maybe a middle management over some training. And then when he gets out, he knows a lot about guns. He probably likes guns. And so he's an editor for a guns and ammo magazine, or a producer or writer for that. He sort of represents Mossberg, which just means they've got somebody who has a couple credentials behind him, being military and law enforcement, and he's the go-between. He knows the words when he goes to negotiate a deal and a sale. He knows how to talk to different groups. That's common to get somebody like that. But these aren't like the credentials of an expert witness who has been through rigorous training and studies and gone through. I'm not sure what Tommy's doing. I'm not sure if he knows what he's doing. Anyway, he hasn't been through the sort of trainings that we've typically seen an expert participate in, as well as the schooling. There was really not a lot there. There was like one class in the military, a little bit in the police officer side. I would say that, especially with his Mossberg job for the last 7 months, and just now also being a Titan consultant, I don't know how long it's been a Titan consultant. I'd say he's a greenie when it comes to expert testimony. That's just my pick here, and that unfortunately for him means he's probably going to be ripped apart on cross.
I'm not entirely sure where we were before we were interrupted, but
Talking about a definition of perceptual distortion, sir.
Okay.
Epstein is where we were.
Do you have kind of a succinct definition of what that is?
Yeah. So when you go into a crisis mode, for lack of a better term, your brain doesn't process information the same way it would if you were thinking rationally. The best example I could give that I think most people would understand would be when you're driving and you encounter a hazard or obstacle that you weren't anticipating, and you get that jolt and everything slows down, you get the adrenaline rush, and you just react to it. You swerve out of the way. You don't think about it. It just happens. But you don't really remember all the details. You might remember a couple of things. It might seem closer than it was. It might seem like time slowed down. There might have been a loud bang that you didn't even hear. Those are some common perceptual distortions that people encounter just throughout standard, adrenaline-filled incidents during the day.
Okay, that's kind of a simplified version.
Yes, sir.
As I hear you describing it, perceptual distortion to you, is it in an incident that's like for instance, a life or death situation?
Yes, sir.
Where you maybe don't hear or see or do things the same way you thought you did?
That's correct.
Okay. Have you studied perceptual distortion as it relates specifically to dynamic shooting incidents?
Yes, sir.
And when I say dynamic shooting incidents, what do you hear when I say that term?
The closest relation I would have to that would be an officer-involved shooting. Something where somebody had to use a firearm to defend their life or defend the life of somebody else, and resulting in a discharge of that firearm, and oftentimes striking another person.
Okay. In your work in law enforcement and the military, did you, I guess, have you identified, read, and absorbed studies related to those types of scenarios?
Yes.
I think that's what we're going to get from this
kind
witness.
of a silly question, but
Tasha Turtle.
probably not a lot of information out there about the mind and thought process of an ordinary everyday Joe in that situation, but there probably is a lot of information related to officer-involved shootings.
Yes, that's where the vast majority of the information comes out of, because the better records are kept. There's more documentation. There's more investigation.
Oh, good. We're going to relate Tommy to a police officer shooting
What
again.
studies
That's
have
what's
you
going to happen.
reviewed related to perceptual distortion in a shooting critical incident?
Well, there's only been there's been 9 big ones. Of those, we have some of the ones that we referenced earlier. We have Artwall, which is one of the most recent and most complete studies. We have Klinger, which was one of the largest studies. We have Honig and Rowland.
He's checking his notes.
Honig and Sultan, and then Solomon and Horn was one of the very early ones in the 1980s. Those are kind of the big studies. There's been smaller ones, but those are the largest ones that really strove to get a large number of people in them.
Okay. When we talk about perceptual distortion, what types of things
Everyone's like, oh,
in your
Klinger.
review of
Yeah,
studies
Klinger.
and your review of on-the-job critical incidents at the LAPD, what type of distortions would you expect to see?
So in the vast majority of these types of incidents, we get auditory exclusion. And auditory exclusion is when you are aware of something that should be causing sound, but you can't hear it. So in other words, oftentimes police officers will shoot and they'll say, I didn't even hear the gun. And that's one of the reasons why police officers and citizens, for that matter, have trouble recounting how many rounds they fired, because they're not hearing the rounds. Oftentimes, their ears don't even ring afterwards. And the next one would be, the next largest one by incident would be tunnel vision, which is when you are so hyper-focused on what is exactly in front of you that you are not able to take in all the details of the area around it.
Okay. In other words, you see one thing and to the exclusion of others.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Well, sure. I mean, moving down the list, we have a lot of time distortion. So in other words, and I think most people can relate to this, when you get scared or you're going through some sort of critical incident, things seem to slow down. In the vast majority of people that experience a time distortion will be things slowed down. Very small percentage get things sped up, but that's a very small percentage as opposed to the people who everything seems to slow down, go in slow motion. The other thing is you get heightened visual acuity. So in other words, the things that you are focused on, if you are experiencing tunnel vision, you'll see crazy detail. You know, one of the things that I remember reading in a report was, as casings were going across a police officer's face, his partner was shooting, he could see the federal on the base of it, which that's pretty amazing here.
Pretty
the mind's an
unbelievable.
amazing thing. And then lastly, we get these distance distortions, or distortions where people don't see, or they see something that's not there, or they remember it differently than what it was. So it could be, for instance, the color. You know, the color of the suspect's hat. It was a blue hat. Well, no, it was actually a black hat. So those things tend to get distorted on a fairly regular basis.
Okay. When we talk about time distortion, you mentioned slowing down. Does that often include time estimation? Like, in other words,
yes,
someone involved in a critical incident asked to give a time, minutes, hours, etc.
Like how long the incident took?
Yes.
Yes, that's very common distortion. People
But it doesn't change
often,
the time that the call came into
underestimate
911.
the amount of time it took.
Okay. One of the things you mentioned a moment ago is like the number of rounds. What did you mean by that?
How many times the person shoots. So, you know, if you can't hear the gun go bang, then it's very difficult to keep track of how many times you pull the trigger. In fact, when people are scared, even people who have a moderate level of training, once they start shooting, it's very difficult to stop shooting until the situation changes. So if they're not hearing how many bullets are going off, how many times the gun is discharging, then it's very difficult to get an accurate count of rounds.
Okay. In the studies that you've reviewed and your experience in real life, have you encountered situations where things like the number of rounds fired from a firearm is inaccurately reported?
Yes.
What about the distance from object to object?
Yes.
What about the time frame in which a situation takes place?
Yes.
What about situations where large, obvious things to other witnesses are completely missed by someone reporting?
Yes.
And vice versa?
Yes.
I want to ask you, in addition to the things that you've studied in a classroom environment or in a research environment, have you personally experienced these types of distortions?
Yes, sir.
Could you give us an example?
Sure. Earlier I referenced the Bronze Star with a V. When I was in Iraq, even though I had had a lot of training, it was the first time I had ever engaged in combat. And I remember distinctly bringing my gun up, discharging the gun, and I didn't hear anything. I was cognizant of the recoil, and I was cognizant that I was cycling the action, but there was no sound that I could hear from my gun. But I could hear gunshots in the distance. Likewise, when I shot the person in front of me, I experienced tunnel vision, and I remember thinking to myself, because I did have a nice high level of training, I need to assess, I need to break my tunnel vision. I was able to realize I had it, and so as I turned to my left, there was another person standing there 10 yards away from me, shooting at me with an AK-47, and I had no idea. I had no idea until I turned, not even 45 degrees, maybe 30 degrees or so, and there was a person shooting at me.
10 yards with an AK is
And it wasn't
point blank.
until I saw him, and there was two bullets. One hit between my legs, and I remember feeling it, and then one went by my right ear.
Yeah, you would feel if it hit
And
between
then
your
all of a sudden
legs.
I could hear really well again, and I was able to engage. When we did a critical incident debrief, when they put me in for the
Let
award,
me just stop you for a second there. What's a critical incident debrief?
when we talked about it afterwards,
Okay.
in other words, to gain group experience from the experience that I had. I told them, I said, they were coming through a hole in the wall. Anytime you win an award for valor, they investigate it in the military. When they went back to investigate it, there was no hole in the wall. They were coming over the wall. To this day, I can describe to you, I can draw you a picture of what this hole in the wall looked like. There was no hole in the wall. They were climbing over it.
So in a situation where your life's on the line, you have to engage a firearm towards someone else and someone's shooting at you, you didn't see things that were there.
Yes.
You saw things that weren't there.
Yes.
You couldn't hear things that you know happened.
Yes.
Okay. In your dozens of officer-involved shootings, would you often be part of like a public safety debrief following a critical shooting incident?
Yes.
What is that?
So a public safety statement, in my department we called it a public safety statement, and it was just a very brief question and answer that the persons who was involved in the incident is compelled to give. And it's so that a supervisor coming on the scene can send people out, one, to see if there's a suspect, two, to see if those bullets impacted anything, and three, to see if anybody else got impacted by those bullets, so that we could make sure that we could triage a scene as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Okay. Sounds like a very brief statement by an officer who discharges his or her duty weapon about how many rounds they think they shot, what direction they think they went, to see if someone else could have been injured.
And the verbiage was very ambiguous. So about how many rounds, general direction, things like that, because we understand that people's minds aren't quite right, and we don't want to put them in a place where they feel like they're giving inaccurate information. So we try to keep it wide.
When you say people's minds aren't quite right, you're talking about someone who's discharged a weapon in a critical incident.
Somebody who's gone through a critical incident or
might not get all the details right.
Correct.
Okay. After that public safety statement is done, is there an investigation done by the LAPD into the officer-involved shooting?
Yes.
Did it often happen when you would actually, not you, but whoever's investigating it that you're kind of supervising, would the investigation often reveal that the details of what an officer gave in a public safety statement were just wrong?
Yes.
Did that happen quite often?
Yes.
Was that kind of an expectation in law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay. In your department, when there was an officer-involved shooting, were the officers who discharged the weapons required to participate in that public safety statement?
Yes.
So they were compelled, they had to as part of their employment?
Yes.
Were they also required to give a statement or a walkthrough of the incident?
Yes. There's always a statement, not necessarily right away, depending on the situation, but there's always a statement given, and then there's generally a walkthrough, although now with the advent of body-worn video, that's not 100%. Sometimes the investigators will just stick to the body-worn video.
Okay, you mentioned video. I want to talk to you about video in a couple different ways, okay? Many times when there was a walkthrough or a statement, let's just stick with the public safety statement. Would investigators often have the benefit of an actual video of the situation as it unfolded?
Yes.
And many times would that video tell a very different story than what the officer recalled?
Yes.
In fact, is that very common?
Yes, it is, sir.
Does it happen in most shootings?
Yes, sir. In the vast majority, I mean, I would never say 100%, but in the vast majority that I was a part of, there was some sort of, I'm just going to fall back on the word distortion, where...
Okay. In addition to the ones that you're a part of, the studies that you testified about previously, do those indicate a high percentage of shootings involving some type of distortion?
It's a spectrum, but on the high side, it's about 95%.
Okay.
Spectrum.
When
95%.
you mentioned that there would be a walkthrough, was that also compelled with the LAPD? In other words, did the officer have to engage in that?
Yes. And if there's a walkthrough, they're allowed to have representation.
Okay, so when the officer is compelled to walk through sometime later, he or she can have a lawyer with them?
Yes, sir.
To advise them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and they're required to do that?
Yes, sir.
As part of their employment?
Yes, sir.
Prior to that walkthrough, did those officers get the benefit of reviewing that body-worn camera?
Yes, sir.
In other words, they get to see what happened before they do the walkthrough?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. In those walkthroughs, the 40 or so that you've been a part of, and you're intimately familiar with the policies of the LAPD, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Are those walkthroughs ever recorded for evidentiary purposes?
No, sir.
Why not?
Well, I would imagine it because before the actual body-worn video became part of it, they tended to not be 100% accurate. So the investigators would take everybody through the walkthroughs and then use that as a starting point for the investigation.
Okay. It sounds like recording it for evidentiary purposes may not be reliable. Is that true?
That was the general thought. Yes, sir.
Okay. The type of recall that you're describing and the perceptual distortion of that recall, is that more prevalent in less trained individuals?
Yes.
For instance, let's say I'm a Navy SEAL and I've gone on 100 missions and I've fired my firearm in combat situations dozens and dozens of times.
Tommy is not a Navy SEAL.
Statistically speaking, would I be more likely to remember detail?
Yes.
An individual who is not in law enforcement, isn't in the military, doesn't have training, statistically speaking, would they be less likely to recall?
In my experience, yes, sir.
Okay. Would you expect
Tommy's
a
falling asleep at his
citizen who discharges a weapon in a critical incident where a loved one's been killed or they have to kill someone, to remember with exact detail things like distance,
No, sir.
location,
No, sir.
number of shots,
No, sir.
exact time?
No, sir.
That'd be an unrealistic expectation, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
We done?
That's what it's for.
We're done. Here comes the cross. I agree. It seems outside of his scope of experience. It's like he's just sharing his opinion of what he thinks. But it doesn't seem grounded in research or study or even experience. Great guy. I mean, I'm not, no shade on this guy's, background.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So, if I hear you correctly, your background involves currently being a manager with Mossberg, correct?
Yes, sir.
You do expert consulting for Titan, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that is essentially what you're performing a function here today, right?
Yes, sir.
As a representative for Titan.
Yes, sir.
Formerly, you were with the LAPD.
Yes, sir.
And prior to that, U.S. Marine Corps.
Yes, sir. Okay. Concurrently.
Concurrent.
For a portion. Yes, sir.
Understood. I was reviewing your CV, and it's true that you are not a psychiatrist, correct?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay. You don't have any psychological background, correct?
No, sir.
You don't have any psychological training, correct?
No, sir.
I know you've referenced a series of studies, but just to be clear, you've never conducted any of those studies yourself, correct?
No, sir.
You've essentially reviewed them as one of the responsibilities of your job.
Yes, sir.
When I was reviewing through your CV, some of the things that I noticed is that you were a patrol supervisor for a portion of your time in LAPD, correct?
That's how I ended it, sir.
Okay, and so you were not a detective in that capacity, correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay. And I just, listen, I'm familiar with Las Vegas PD, but a patrol supervisor, would it be fair to say that you might be kind of a supervising officer, you would go out to maybe a scene and work with patrol officers about preserving a scene, things of that nature?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Rather than, let's say, I don't know, a homicide detective who comes into a scene a little bit later if there's been a killing to kind of do the
yes, sir.
Kind of investigating. All right. I know that you did some work in terms of a firearm subject matter expert. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And it sounded like you helped write policies and procedures to teach officers on how to handle ballistics as well as ammunition. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir.
Was that for the majority of your time at the LAPD, or what
Yes,
did you do the bulk of your work at?
It would have been at the firearms unit, 9 to 11 years, sir.
Understood.
He's not mocking him, but
you
he's
mentioned
pointing out
that
the
as part of the
weaknesses
LAPD, you would assist
background.
command in reviewing information gathered from OISs. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And possibly provide them information about, as you said, potentially changes to policy, correct?
Yes, sir.
Or discipline, correct?
Not the discipline itself, simply the facts leading.
Understood. You didn't conduct any investigations in those OISs. You were collecting information from the actual investigators and then passing it
Yes,
along
sir.
to higher ups. Is that be
Correct.
accurate?
Yes, sir.
You didn't conduct any psychological evaluations of any of the officers involved in these OISs. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
I want to talk a little bit about the materials that you reviewed in preparation for this case. Isn't it true that you reviewed an officer's report? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You reviewed a video of a walkthrough of Mr. Randolph.
Yes, sir.
And the other thing that you reviewed was some prior proceeding from Detective O'Kelly. He testified at a prior proceeding, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You did not have an opportunity to review Mr. Randolph's first interview with the police, correct?
No, sir. Those are the only documents.
You did not have an opportunity to review his second interview with police, correct?
No, sir.
You didn't review any recorded witness statements in this case?
Only the video, sir.
Okay. You didn't review any video surveillance from this case?
No, sir.
You didn't review any 911 recordings from this case?
Just the ones that were documented in the report, sir.
And I understand that maybe some of these things are memorialized in the report.
Yes, sir.
But just to be clear, you didn't actually listen to the words that were coming out of people's mouths on 911,
Correct,
correct?
sir. Yes, sir.
You didn't review the autopsy report in this case?
No, sir. Again, just what was in the Officer O'Kelly's report.
Okay. You would agree with me, even in the context of going out to an OIS just to gather information, you would agree more information is better?
Yes, sir.
Because it gives you a bigger and more complete picture of what's actually happening?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you would want to have the most information at your disposal when you're offering an opinion in court, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because that would give you the full picture.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask you just briefly about your compensation. You were paid $350 an hour for each hour that you worked on the case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How many hours did you work on this case?
350 is not. That's average rate.
15.
Okay. Oh boy. You don't mind, I'm going to pull up my
350
computer. I
times 15
can't
is
do that math.
3,500 plus half of 3,500, which is 1,500 plus 250, 175. So
So that would amount to $5,250. Is that correct?
I got there in my head. I did it.
That's what your calculator's telling you, sir.
If I told you 15 times 350 was that, and then it's $450 for every hour that you testify at trial.
Yes, sir.
So talk slowly.
Does that also include waiting? I don't know if it includes waiting or not, or just when you're sitting in the chair.
Waiting too, sir.
Okay. So
He
how
bills
long
for
have
his
you been
waiting time?
About 4 hours, sir.
Okay.
How much did you
All
make
right,
while you
so-
sat there, looked into your watch right there? That was
If we
at least
just
a
did
buck.
those 4 hours, that's another $1,800. Fair?
Don't tell my wife.
Okay. All right. So all told, and we're not even including the time that you're sitting in the chair, we're at $7,050. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Wow.
Now, the bulk of your testimony focused on potential effects on officers being in critical incident situations, correct?
Yes, sir.
And general things that you might expect an officer to have happen to them when they're in one of those situations, correct?
Have happened to their perception. Yes, sir.
And it would be fair to say that based on the vast majority of these OISs that you have looked at or examined or even experienced on your own, right? These circumstances have been thrust upon the officer or the person involved in this critical incident. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're operating from a standpoint of, the situation came to the person, correct?
Yes.
It's a very different situation than if the person involved in the shooting created the situation. You would agree, right?
Yes.
Because if the person created the situation, the circumstances aren't coming to them, they're creating the circumstance, right?
Yes, sir.
So, for example, if someone were to, stage a shooting situation, that is an entirely different situation than, let's just say, a routine officer going out, coming upon a situation where people start firing at them, right?
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me that if you've staged the circumstances, you're not under the same stresses because you already know what's going to happen, right?
Yes, sir.
So, if you planned on having someone, for example, be inside your home, you're not surprised when you walk in the door, right? Because you already knew and set that up, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, if someone was with you and was completely unaware of that, that might be a very different situation for your companion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because they would have no idea, right?
Yes, sir.
But not you, the person who staged it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when they are discharging, the person who staged it is discharging a weapon, they're not going through necessarily the same stressors. And there may be some stressors, but maybe not the same as just a totally kind of out of the blue, whoa, what happened here? As you were mentioning, you were kind of in this line of duty and someone's firing AK-47s at you out of the blue, right?
Right.
Very different situations, correct?
Yes.
And that's why context is key, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's why having the most information is really, really important, right?
Yes, sir.
And sometimes there can be, you would agree as an officer, there are motives that people might have for wanting to set up a crime, correct?
Everybody's got motives, sir.
Everyone's got motives. For example, I'm sure you understand this, money could be a huge motive to commit a crime, right?
Yes, sir.
If someone stood to gain hundreds of thousands of dollars from killing someone, that could be a motive to kill, right?
Yes, sir.
Love is another motive, right, detective? I'm sorry, not detective, officer?
Sergeant.
Sergeant, we'll go with sergeant. Right, sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Love could drive someone to kill, correct?
Yes, sir.
And a really deadly cocktail could be money mixed with love. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
That could drive someone to kill, right?
Yes, sir.
Desperation can be also a factor in committing a crime, right?
Yes, sir.
If someone is down on their luck, that could drive someone to do something desperate, right?
Yes, sir.
And if someone were staging a crime and identified someone down on their luck, that could be someone that you could work with to maybe accomplish your goals, correct?
It seems reasonable, sir.
Potentially promising this person money if they simply do a deed for them, correct?
Yes, sir.
In your years of working in law enforcement, I'm sure you have heard of people who have committed crimes to stand to gain life insurance money, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's a pretty common one, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right? Sometimes people take out not one, not two, but maybe even 3 policies out on a single person. You've heard of that, haven't you?
I have heard of that, yes, sir.
Sometimes people even stand to gain beyond life insurance, like homes or bank accounts, right?
Yes, sir.
Here's another reason that people might be able to do it, and you just correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes there are situations where people want to get rid of people because they're putting them in bad financial situations, right? For example, let's say someone's driving you into debt. You might want to get rid of them, correct?
Yes, sir.
That could be a motive to want to commit a crime and erase that person out of the way, right?
That seems reasonable, yes, sir.
And in this case, you haven't had an opportunity to review any of the bank statements in this, correct?
Correct,
in
sir.
this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you don't know how much Mr. Randolph is in debt because you haven't seen that information, correct?
That's correct, sir.
You also don't know what he stood to gain because you haven't reviewed any possible life insurance policies or any potential wills that are involved in this case. Is that correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay. So at the end of the day, when we're dealing with the dynamics that you were talking about, that operates essentially from a person kind of thrust into a situation rather than staging it, correct?
Yes, sir.
But let's just, for the sake of argument, let's move to some of the things that you talked about. You talked about perceptual distortion. And essentially when people are in crisis mode, maybe when they're initially interviewed, they may not be able to get all the details right, correct?
Correct.
One way of at least helping ameliorate that or helping that out is maybe giving them another opportunity to talk about the situation. Maybe at a little time farther away from the actual incident. You would agree with that, correct?
That's very common, yes, sir.
You would agree that it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be 100% correct, but one good tactic, at least, to maybe get a more complete story or get a version of what happened that's a less stressful environment is to pace out when you're speaking to these people about the interviews, correct?
Pace out? I don't want to.
Sure. Give you an example. I understand that in OISs, you'll have an officer involved in a shooting do a walkthrough at that point in time, correct? Generally right after it happened, right?
No, sir. There's usually a little bit of time. They give them a little bit of downtime, generally.
I guess it depends on the jurisdiction. I mean,
Yes,
you'd
sir.
have no reason to disagree that sometimes officers hear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But if you give them another chance to come back and talk again, and I'm not saying it's done with law enforcement officers where they come back multiple times, but that could be one way of getting a less stressed out version of the events from the person involved in the shooting, correct?
Sure. And it's also a way to get more information.
Right. So if someone had been interviewed not once, not twice, but 3 times over the span of a month, that might be, you might get a little more of an accurate read on the situation than if you just did it one time immediately thereafter, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Tommy's writing a note.
And
Object to something.
One of the
Anything.
things that you mentioned was, for example, you mentioned auditory exclusions, right? Sometimes people say they go through things, and I think even you mentioned it, when you were going through a shooting event, you couldn't actually even hear the gunshots coming from your own gun, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But sometimes there are people who do say, you know, oh, I did hear this or I did hear that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes they could be correct, sometimes they could be wrong, correct?
Correct, sir.
And if you had a recording of someone indicating whether they could hear something or not, that might be a good way to check to see if they heard something, right? If you had a recording of them in the moment where they're indicating whether they heard something or not, that could be a good resource to review, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? So if we had a recording of someone saying, I don't know, I heard the shot, that might be a good piece of evidence to rely upon, at least to maybe reference and double check what's happening there, right?
I love his hypotheticals.
Additionally, you mentioned time distortion, correct?
Yes, sir.
For a lot of people, time tends to slow down for people, right?
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me that it might be a good idea that if you have materials that might be able to objectively cross-reference or check what time things are happening, and that might be a good thing to look into, right?
Yes, sir.
So if someone said an event happened, and maybe you have phone records that might tie into that, that could be an additional supplementary source to look in to verify it, right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
If you had, for example, like an eyewitness who isn't involved in any of the shooting but may have heard or saw things, that might be a good source to review to see and check with them, right?
Yes, sir.
And you could cross-reference it to see if things are checking out, right?
Right.
Let's talk about distance distortions. You mentioned one of the things that people who, you know, if officers, if they're not staging it, but let's just say an officer who's in a critical situation, they may not be able to perfectly get the distance, right?
Correct.
And that's a reasonable expectation, right?
Sure.
Would you agree with me that one way to maybe evaluate things like proximity is to maybe go to the scene where these things are purportedly supposed to happen and get a good look and document, like, how big is the space? Are we in a field? Are we in a room? Are we in a hallway? Things like that.
Yes, sir.
Right? That would be a good way to at least evaluate some of these things, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because then you'd be able to know objectively, is someone is in close proximity or are they really far away, right?
Yes, sir.
Best part about this is defense has to pay $450 an hour to sit through this. They're getting slaughtered.
And same thing, I think you mentioned distance to object. Again, going to a scene, measuring out a scene, observing a scene is another good way to at least cross-reference that rather than relying solely on the word of the person that's relaying the information.
Yes.
You mentioned that in your line of work, even with officers, that there may be approximately 95% of officers relaying some detail that is distorted, correct?
Yes, sir.
If I heard you correctly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you're not saying that when these officers relay kind of that an event happened, that every single thing that they said just couldn't be relied on whatsoever. You're not saying that, are you?
No, sir.
You're saying, like, you gave a great example about, like, oh, you know, someone didn't quite get the color of the suspect's hat right?
Yes, sir.
Right, but if someone is kind of saying, look, I'm standing in this general area and I did this, and then they're interviewed again, they said, I'm standing in this general area and I did this, and then they are interviewed a third time and they say, I'm standing here and I did this, that's a little bit different, correct?
You're referring to the consistency over...
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So if someone is telling you, this is where I am, you might tend to believe that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you mentioned that in less trained individuals, you believe, in your opinion, that they may be more prone to have more distortion than someone who's trained, correct?
That is what I've seen as a trainer for the last 30 years.
And let's, if you don't mind, if I just want to delve into that a little bit. You haven't conducted any studies with regular civilians, have you?
No, sir.
Okay. And I'm not saying it's not necessarily true, but I just want to kind of
yes, you are
kind of nail this down. You haven't done any studies. You haven't done any psychological examinations, correct, of any civilians on this?
No, sir. I'm not qualified to do that.
Okay. And to be fair, I mean, There are citizens that go through traumatic events all the time, correct?
Correct.
So for example, here in Las Vegas, we had 1 October, right? Those people went through a number of horrible things, but I mean, if they recall, look, I'm generally here and these are the things that are happening. I mean, they're not 100% off base on that, correct?
Right.
They may have a couple details wrong here or there.
Yes, sir.
But if they're, the big moments, they're likely remembering, correct?
I couldn't speak to everyone, but it seems like the stories would kind of bear out the big general things.
And Sergeant, again, when we're talking about those type of individuals, those are individuals when the crisis is thrust upon them, correct?
Yes, sir.
We're not talking about an individual that has planned and staged it. Isn't that right?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
That was a mic drop. Boom. Let's see what they can do to rehabilitate this witness to get him to stop saying yes to everything the prosecution is saying.
You know what you were retained to do in this case?
Do you remember what we asked you to do?
You know that you're an expert witness, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, in order to testify in a case like this, there's a notice that's filed that announces that you're an expert witness, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you know that you were noticed as a use of force expert, right?
Yes, sir.
And you are that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were noticed to provide opinions about the effects on someone in a dynamic shooting situation, such as sequencing, placement, and recall.
Yes, sir.
And you have the ability to do that, right?
Yes, sir.
You were provided with a limited number of pieces of information, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you weren't here to investigate what happened in a case like this, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, you certainly, Mr. Hamner, that's the prosecutor's name, never met him, right?
No, sir.
Met me for the first time today, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A few weeks ago, I emailed you some documents and said, take a look at this, and we're going to call you to testify, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You understand that the jury, when you testify in a trial, is the group of people that decide what happened, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And certainly, they're capable of doing that, right?
Yes, sir.
You understand that the prosecutor can get up here and give you a million scenarios about what you're not noticed to do, what you're not provided with information to do, spinning his own motive. You understand that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A lot of people have motivations for things, right?
Yes, sir.
For instance, if someone, I don't know, shot your wife in the head in her own home, you might want to fight back, right?
Yes, sir.
And in that situation, you don't choose what happened to you, right?
I mean, there's a binary option at the beginning. You can run away, but if you're perceiving a threat, no, there's no choice. You're going to fight.
Okay. And if you fight, statistically speaking, you're probably not going to get every detail right, correct?
Correct.
You might get the large number of them right.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And if you're being honest, you might say things like, I don't have any idea how many times I shot, right?
Yes, sir.
Or I think I was in this area, right?
Yes, sir.
And you could get it a step or two wrong, right?
Yes, sir.
Does that mean you're lying?
No, sir.
It's pretty normal, isn't it?
That's very typical, sir.
Were you trying to lie when you gave information in an investigation related to the Bronze Star?
No, sir.
Did you get a few things wrong?
Yes, sir.
Did you get the majority of it right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hamner asked you about your compensation. You're a professional who's being paid for your work, right?
Yes, sir.
So am I. So is she. So are they. Like, you understand that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As a law enforcement officer, were you ever called to the stand to testify?
Yes, sir.
How many times?
Hundreds.
Okay. As an expert witness, have you ever been called to the stand to testify?
With the department, I testified as an expert witness 3 times, sir.
On behalf of law enforcement as an expert?
Yes,
right?
sir.
Have you ever in your life testified as an expert for a defendant in a criminal case before?
No, sir.
Okay. In this particular case, were you given a walkthrough video?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's a video where someone is asked to act out the sequencing, location, and events of a dynamic situation?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen a law enforcement officer have to do that?
Not on video, no, sir.
Objection relevance? Can we approach before you answer?
Okay. They said, can we approach before his answers? They objected to the relevance. Bonita Clark, welcome, by the way. We're catching up on yesterday's events before the court goes live. The court has not started yet for the day. They're starting, 11 o'clock today, which puts it like 1 or 2 o'clock. Yes, 2:30. That sounds right. So we're catching up on yesterday's events. We're going through. This was an amazing exchange of direct and cross on these witnesses. It's really good. So that's what we're doing. Some of us have watched this once before. A lot of us are watching it for the first time. Evangeline Light, thank you very much for gifting 5 memberships right there. And look at that. Bonita Clark just got a membership. It does help. You turn your gift setting on, you participate, and YouTube rewards you. Let's see. ML also, I Object was gifted a membership. Brandon Shalok and Cooking Without Looking. I love that name. Welcome. Thank you all. Thank you, Evangeline, for the gifted memberships as well.
I had asked you about this walkthrough video. You had an opportunity to see it, right?
Yes, sir.
So was the jury. Have you ever seen a law enforcement officer have to do that same type of walkthrough for an evidentiary reason?
No, sir.
It would be unfair and unreliable, wouldn't it?
Objection, that's an improper opinion. Call for an improper opinion.
I don't think it calls for it.
On this if he's going to expound.
Okay. You agree with me that you reviewed the walkthrough video in this case as it relates to the use of force expertise that you have, right?
Yes, sir.
And you agree with me that type of evidence is unreliable, right?
Objection, it's an cause for an improper opinion.
It definitely does not. You agree with that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The situations that you mentioned before, where law enforcement does a walkthrough, they're compelled and required to do that, right?
Yes, sir.
You know that Mr. Randolph wasn't required to do that interview.
Yes, sir.
Okay. He was trying to help law enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
Objection, calls for speculation.
Okay. On that video, he indicates that he's cooperating with law enforcement as there of his own free will.
Megan.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
And it appears
Thank you,
that
Thomas,
he
as well.
answers their questions in that walkthrough.
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me that the idea that being able to recount a dynamic critical force situation like that with specificity on things like location, sequencing, timing, probably pretty unlikely, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Unlikely.
Yep. So you just testified on redirect examination that in your opinion the walkthrough was unreliable. You just said that 2 seconds ago?
It's coming in hot.
Yes.
No, yes or no?
Yes.
That's your testimony. You made that determination even though you didn't review the interview, the first interview, correct? Yep. Yes or no? You didn't review the first interview, did you?
No, sir.
You didn't review the second interview, did you?
No, sir.
You didn't review a shred of video surveillance, correct?
Correct, sir.
You didn't read any bank statements?
Correct, sir.
You didn't read any life insurance policies?
Correct, sir.
You didn't read any recorded witness statements from anybody who had a recorded interview, correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay. You would agree, you told me on cross-examination more information is better, correct?
Yes, sir.
You said that you prefer having more information before you render opinions in cases that you're hired to do things, correct?
Yes, sir.
You have been paid $7,000 to render an opinion and you didn't review any of those materials, correct?
Correct, sir.
You would agree with me those might be pretty important information before you tell this jury that you think that walkthrough is unreliable, correct?
Sir, it
Yes or
wasn't
no?
relevant
Yes or
to
no?
what I was talking about.
Yes or no? Do you think it would be pretty good for you to have all of that other information to review before you make the call that the walkthrough is unreliable?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Bank statements, witness interviews, other memorializations of reports have to do with an investigation, right?
Yes, sir.
Does that have anything to do whatsoever with the statistical representation that there is perceptual distortion
No,
in
sir.
a shooting incident?
No.
Would any of that stuff help you with the opinions that you were actually noticed to give?
No.
Other than all the flair and the drama of Mr. Hamner, that stuff has nothing to do with your job, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Nothing further.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have any questions for this witness? Okay? You raise your question on the full sheet.
Now we get juror questions.
Your number, you can also approach.
Let's see. Let's see if we see any facial expressions. Prosecution's got a big grin on his face as he walks by Josh there. He knows he won that battle. That was, wow. Let's see, the jury questions are getting better and better. Let's see if we can count how many. I'm trying to keep an eye on Tommy as well as count how many questions we've got from the judge. There's one. She hands to them. She's looking at another. There's two. And possibly a third right there. Looks like we might have three questions. I'm not sure if all of them are going to get asked or not. Tommy's staring intently here at this. Let's see what happens.
Who are all the studies you referenced conducted by?
Police psychiatrists.
Who are all the
Psychologists.
studies you referenced paid by?
I don't have that information.
How big were the data sets in each of the studies you referenced?
They ranged. The smallest was 25. The largest was 962, I believe, thereabouts.
Mr. Johnson, any follow-up based on your questions?
So they're asking about the studies he's referencing, asking about data sets, who paid for them, who conducted them.
In addition to the, you mentioned that the majority of the studies were police psychiatrists.
Psychologists, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You also reviewed a summary of studies conducted by the University of Prague. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the largest conglomeration of
Yes, sir.
different studies.
It's an easy compilation to review.
Okay. Nothing further.
Mr. Chairman, any follow-up based on the jury questions?
No, Your Honor.
Do the ladies and gentlemen of the jury have any further questions for this witness? Okay, seeing no response, everyone excused. Thank you
All right.
very much for your testimony here today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, no further.
And you can stop the stopwatch. Quit billing $450 an hour. Those were his notes. He kept glancing. He kept them on the side, but he glanced down, especially when he was naming the studies, the names of, there was Klinger and, let's see, Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah, he had University of Prague. I think that was one of the studies he was talking about. This was gold. This was very, very good. Not for Tommy, unfortunately. I don't think Tommy's team scored many points today at all. Even their expert witness seems to have done a lot more for the prosecution than for the defense. Little discussion here. I think we're about ready to wrap up for the day. Just check and see.
I'll take the shortest recess in the history of this trial. We're only going to be in recess for 5 minutes. We need to make a determination as to our start time tomorrow. During this recess, you must not discuss or communicate with anyone, including fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. You must not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. You must not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. You must not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, refit the aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. You must not form or express any opinion regarding this case unless it's submitted to you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 4:45. We can recess till 4:50.
All rise for the jury.
I almost am able to tell every word that she says. Almost. It's very close. She says we're going to take a 5-minute break, though. At the 5-minute break, the jury's going to be excused, which means they're also going to turn off the mics. We're not going to hear. The whole purpose of the discussion is to figure out how much longer they're going to go today and when they're going to start today. So we know they're going to start at 2:30 Eastern time, which means 2.5 hours. Let's let the jury leave. And Matthew's saying, no, billable hours. This is still billable on the trip home. It's a lot of money. He's going to get more than $8,000 then. He can probably add another $1,000, $1,500 or so to that. Scorecard for yesterday, prosecution 100, defense 0. It was not a good day for defense. And that's bad, especially when you've got your first two witnesses on the stand. That was the last witness for yesterday. Yeah, the judge said all we're waiting on right now is for the judge to tell us what time they're starting tomorrow. We already know, so it's 2:30. We can end right now. I was just waiting to see if there's any spiciness or hot mic or something going on. Why did they make it seem like this is the first walkthrough ever done at a crime scene with a suspect? I know they've done this before. they did that with this last expert witness, this Jeremy Stafford. First of all, props to the guy. He's military service. He served as a police officer for 25 years. That's no small thing. I'm not mocking that or laughing at that. That is awesome. Props to him for that. But the experience he had, the training he had there, did not seem to be the level that we typically see in an expert witness. It seems to be his main expertise is I like guns and I know a lot about them. That's why I write in magazines about guns, and that's why I host a TV show talking about guns. He didn't seem to be the caliber of witness, and he definitely didn't seem prepared enough to be able to handle cross, which ate him alive. The defense would have been better calling no witnesses than calling a single witness. That was defense's case. Those two last witnesses were. And he gets to tack on another $1,000 and rub it in. It's billable hours. I mean, the company says, great job. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. I guess it does help their reputation a little bit if you win. But, I mean, sometimes the deck's stacked against you. Ryan, sorry to hear you're not feeling well. Get feeling better. We need you up to full strength for whenever you get to go to court again for us. Don't experts charge a flat rate for every day in court? Every expert's a little bit different. Typically, we do see those, about $300, between $150 and $300 for research per hour. 15 hours seemed like a lot of hours for just watching like one video over and over. That seemed a little excessive on the study side. But then I've never heard a witness have a flat rate or have a billable hours for waiting to testify. I thought it was actual time on the stand. I've never heard it brought out like that. So maybe that's standard, but I just wasn't aware. Anyway, the expert witnesses, they're not cheap. You pay a lot for the ability to get them to speculate. Okay, walkthroughs happen more pre-body camera. Yeah, now that we've got the body cameras, that's more reliable than someone's memory of something. The last witness might have distorted perception now and charge another 15 hours. Hey, that's the way I remember it. It was like 3 days of testimony and everything. He had to read other people's reports too. Don't forget, he did. He's never done any of his own studies, which generally you see expert witnesses at least involved in studies directly. He could barely even remember the names of the studies he was citing. Okay. Any other questions? Let me see if we can skip ahead. They say it's the shortest break in the history of this trial. Stop recording. We're almost done. There we go. There we go. Now we're skipped ahead. Jury's coming back in.
Please be seated. We are back on the record in C-250966, State Matter versus Thomas Randolph. May the record reflect that Mr. Randolph is present with his attorney, deputy district attorneys on behalf of the state. Do both parties stipulate to the presence of our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Judge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of the witnesses for today. We will pick back up tomorrow, so I know you guys are so tired of me reading you this admonishment, but I will read it to you before you leave today with our start time for tomorrow. We're about to take our night recess. During this recess, you must not discuss or communicate with anyone, including fellow jurors, in any way regarding this case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. You must not read, watch, listen to news or media accounts or commentary about the case. You must not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. You must not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. And you must not form or express any opinion regarding this case until this file is submitted to you. Actually, can I have counsel privilege for this? Sorry.
No, we just had a break, like a 10-minute break, so we could figure out what time to start, and then she calls another sidebar. During the break, Tommy was led out with his attorneys, both of them went with him outside the courtroom to consult a little bit, probably talking about that big question that will be coming up eventually of whether or not he's going to want to testify in his own defense, as that is a decision only he can make. And it will, probably impact the length of the trial, probably considerably, considering how much questioning and definitely cross would go on with that witness. Tommy's packing up and going home. Yeah, they took an L today. They took an L. There's the tape measure. Is that what you're talking about? He has a tape measure right there? I don't know what that is. Tommy with the tape measure. I see it. I see the tape measure here, and it surprises me. First of all, tape measures are made out of metal that is fairly dangerous. I mean, you can get hurt just using one the way they're designed to be used, let alone if you have ill intent. Maybe it's his pill box. I don't think he gets to carry his pills with him. They were administered. Somebody brings them to him and makes sure he consumes it. That's it. Are we sure it's a tape measure?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are doing our best to wrap this up and make sure you guys will be out of here by Friday, just like I promised you.
By Friday.
But in order to do that, we have to fluctuate the scheduling a little bit. So tomorrow we're going to convene at 11:30, but we will not be breaking for lunch, so I need you guys to eat before you get here, if you don't mind. We will be breaking in the afternoon, so you guys can have a snack, but we are not going to have an hour and a half lunch, but we're not starting until 11:30. So I need you guys here tomorrow morning at 11:30.
This is a dilemma.
Okay?
This is a dilemma, guys. Hang on. What did she just say?
The jury.
She said we're starting at 11:30, but we're not breaking for lunch. If there is no lunch break, when do I stop the live stream? It's my Wednesday night. I've got a meeting. I've got to be with the kids. Okay. We're gonna figure this out. Maybe they'll call just a short break. They're not just gonna make us just work and work and work. Why aren't they feeding the jury? Costs too much. This jury could eat them out of their budget. She said to eat before we start. We're going to have to take lunch then for sure. Do you have anything odd that you could take to court that nobody? Do you have anything odd that you take to court that nobody else knows about? Is this like a good luck charm, Matthew? Because now I'm curious what you bring. What would your good luck charm be that you bring to court? You don't stop the live stream. Here's my dilemma. At 7 o'clock Eastern time, I have to be do my youth mentorship meeting. It's I'll be gone. I'll be 15, 20 minutes away from home. We need to be done by then. What time has Brandy been finishing? Man, we might need to just go all day long. You just put yourself on loop while we watch. No, we can't do that. Another Verdict Watch podcast on Friday. It could be. We could be on Verdict Watch, and that could cause some dilemmas for the podcast, but we'll look. Can Little R.A. fill in? I'm sure, Greeners, I'm sure he would love to, but no. They're actually all out swimming right now. Coolest day of the week, and they chose today to go swimming. It's going to be super hot on Friday, and we're going to be at home then. Matthew Harris says, I always have a rubber cockroach or rubber snake in my portfolio when I go to trial, my padfolio. You never know when you'll need them. Wow. Does Nicole says, let's see, I give you $100 math if you can guess what I take. Okay, let's wrong answers only. Nicole Goodman has an item she takes with her to court that's very unique. Can we guess what that item is? And she's saying $100 to the winner. I mean, I'm not the one giving out the money here, but when you're rolling it, I guess. Go ahead, Nicole. What does Nicole take to court with her? I'm curious. Here we go. Lucky coin. It says that a rubber ducky. I think she was just saying to Matthew the $100. I'm not trying to put the deal on for everybody. Matthew says, I'm guessing you have a secret Ella Woods fluffy pink pen topper in your trial bag. Fart spray, an old pencil, coconut, bear spray. I don't think that would get through security. A rabbit's foot, pocket recorder. Let's see, a mirror, a cash cow. That's a good choice. Dental floss, a unicorn keychain, a lucky pen. Lindsay's up here with, let's see, I need to be able to scroll. Why can't I scroll? Lindsay's up here with whiskey, 8-pound bowling ball. I might have to live stream all afternoon and not take a break. That would work well, especially if they end today. If they end today and we go into Verdict Watch tomorrow, then I could be over with Brandy for Verdict Watch. Lucky underwear, a Recovery Addict mouse pad, a gemstone, a paper clip, pick for kids, dry shampoo. Hey, Brandy, welcome. Welcome. We're trying to figure out what to do today because the court's not going to have a break, which is normally when we stop our live stream. We might have to go all the way through today, and that would put us on a weird schedule. I don't know what we do tomorrow. Let's see. How long till trial starts? It's going to start after lunch for us, so we have 2 hours before it starts. Has anyone seen, let's see. So far, nope. Everybody's been wrong. So the lucky opossum was gone. The rubber chicken was wrong. We're never going to get this. Let's see. I'm thinking it's a Hot Wheels car. A Hot Wheels car. Is that right? Verdict Watch with RA's eyebrows. Just saying, the eyebrows are supposed to arrive today. Let me just check the order. Look at the delivery.
Verdict Watch with Ra's eyebrows.
Yes. Brandy, I do have my eyebrows coming. They should be arriving today, so it should be ready. Delivered today. Package was left inside the residence's mailbox. Should we go and get them? Should I run out and get the package before the neighbors steal it and be like, what are these neighbors ordering? I don't want to leave and miss what Nicole brings with her to court. Go get them. Go get them now, says Mandy. I can't show Brandy's on here, first of all. I can't show Brandy. It's going to be a complete surprise for Brandy when she sees the eyebrows I've ordered. Judge should say they'll have their afternoon break still, so you'd get to have a break point to use. She says they're not going to take lunch, eat before they go. And Nurse for God, by the way, thank you very much for your super chat. Those super chats are super awesome and allow us to keep doing what we do, so I appreciate that. Get the eyebrows. We will wait. Okay, we're going to have a little bit of music. What's some good hold music? How about this one? I'll be right back. I'm going to go get the package. All right, we have 3 things. Let's see, this one says, welcome. Important, please open immediately. That means it's probably junk mail, so that goes over there. Important tax documents enclosed. Office of the Tax Collector. Just kidding, I'm not going to rip that up. It's... Why are they sending us tax bills? This is a tax collector. There's nothing in here that could be good news. Why do we... Okay, that's going to circular file for now as well. If they really want me, they'll send me another. And this, I think, is what it is. It was sort of bent a little bit in the mailbox. Hopefully it didn't, crease the eyebrows, and it'll be all funny shaped. Let's see. Tear here to open. Oh, man. Oh, wow. Yeah. Let's see, does it have a mustache too? Is it like a 2-part? No, it's just the eyebrows. That's good. They are They're more impressive than I thought. But they are here. They're good. We're going to put these right over here. Those will be saved for Verdict Watch when it happens. I'm ready. I have all the required equipment. Okay, we missed. Nicole, are you ever going to tell us? I will only reveal the answer when RA and all of you give up and call no joy. We have to all kneel down and beg your answer. Just transfer us to Brandy when you need to go. I think we might have to do that. I'll stay as long as we can. They might end court. All right, we'll be able to follow all day today. But if I have to leave early, we'll transfer everyone over to Brandy. Okay. Let's see. Wow. Can't read all these. Yeah, cover your eyes, Brandy. It's a surprise. It's a surprise, but I have eyebrows. Like extra eyebrows. Guardian Angel pin. Okay, all right. Here's what we need to do. For Nicole to be able to tell us what happened. Oh, you already did. Okay, I was going to say I was going to do a poll, and we need 100% of the people to say I give up. And if we could get that answer, then we would get the answer. Goodman Law says I carry a magic 8-ball. Okay, next question, follow-up question. Do you use it when making important decisions in court? Yes, Brandy has verdict eyebrows, and I now have verdict eyebrows. We're going to do a verdict watch together. So it will be on Brandy's channel for that, which is just awesome. I'm glad that she is allowing that to happen that way. Brandy, how's your day going, by the way? I know you're busy. I saw you pop in just briefly. My tinfoil hat is I craft a new one every time because I think they're specifically, they have to be designed for the situation. So sometimes it has a little spike on top, and sometimes it's more of like just a layer of foil. Okay. Hey, Paul. That is awesome. Dale says, I answered that. Look back. That's cool. Good for you, Dale. Good job. I think the $100 was just to Matthew if you guessed it, because I think that was specifically in the statement. So sorry about that, Dale, but good job on the guess. All right. This verdict watch will be great. It is going to be a lot of fun. Hey, guess who's on the phone right now? Hold on. Hey, Brandy, how are you doing? Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, my phones are swapping over to AirPods. I figured I'd call you for a minute. I'm taking a break from recording the podcast, so I was going to call you and see if y'all had any theories on the garage door light. I've been sitting here working on this because I'm recording the podcast recaps, and I have a theory. I was going to see if y'all had come up with any theories about what he was doing during that time.
This is a great question. The garage door light, when it first was brought up, when they first said when he first said, "Oh, the light went off," and I just about pissed my pants or something. I forget. It was something crass, and and I'm like, hang on. That garage door is on a timer, and we didn't know yet that they were going to go there. And I was saying they've got to check what the timer is because that's going to throw off his story. It won't match up. But he's got, even in like the best case scenario, if we go with like how the defense has stretched and got their extra second, so how long they were at the stoplight and when the time, the call, and everything else. If you stretch all that out, you still have about 7 minutes unaccounted for, right? As far as where that light falls, I don't think any of it works with Tommy's story, the light turning off and when it was turned back on. So basically, him saying it turned off at that point and that happened, it just doesn't fit. It's like if it happened at a different time than when he said it did, which is the big thing. And I don't know if that can go to prove anything one way or another, other than it just goes to prove that what he's telling us isn't true. So I'd love to hear if you've got a theory on that as well, but it's just one more thing that just the evidence doesn't add up. I mean, 5 minutes and 8 seconds.
Nothing that Tommy says adds up. Nothing that Tommy says. But it did make me kind of take a look at everything, and you know how I am about a timeline. So I put everything in a timeline, and I do have a theory.
Okay.
So if you look at the phone call of the neighbor, Mark Bartlett, it started at 8:33 and 36 seconds, and then it ended about 8:38ish. And he heard the shots while he was on there. So that means that Mike Miller was shot during those 4 minutes, at some point during those 4 minutes. And if the garage door light went off at the time that he said it did on when he was in the garage, and he made the whole thing about how it scared him and all that, that means it would have had to have been, that button would have had to have been hit at about 8:43, which is 5 minutes after that call ends. So my theory is, I think that the reason that Mike was wearing the baggy clothes and the shoes that used to belong to Sharon's ex-husband or late husband and all of that, I think that his plan was to change clothes. I think those clothes that he had in the Walmart bags were not so he could go stay with his girlfriend. I think those were put in the car when they were out earlier so that he would have clothes to change into when he left. And I think that that's where he was going. He was walking out to the garage thinking that his job was done and he was going to go out there and change clothes and go on about his way. And I think that Tom used those minutes to stage everything. You know, his DNA was also on those Walmart bags. So I think that he put those there. And then that one bag, the cloth bag that had the jewelry and stuff in it, you know, was out there. So I think that he used those minutes, and maybe he hit that door because, you know, he was, you know, turning that light on so he could stage it, or maybe he was done so he was closing that door back or whatever. But that was, you know, about 2 minutes before he called 911. So I think that he used the time for all of that.
Yeah, I think that after Sharon was shot, Tommy and Mike were together and talking. I don't think there was a rush. I don't think this was like, and now instantly turn on him. I think it was like, okay, here's the stuff we planned. Here are the bags. Here's the jewelry you can pawn. This is our plan. I'm going to go get this is how we're going to get the money. We're going to meet up. It's going to be, and then the change of shoes. Okay. Yeah. He's sitting down there on the steps, you know, right there at the door to the garage, putting the shoes on. And I think that shot through the back of his head was the first one. Yeah. Everything else was just to make it look like something else happened. Yeah. And I mean, I know the state's saying they think that everything was fired right there from the doorway. I think it wasn't. I think that he moved around and tried different angles to try to make to get the shots right. And, but yeah,
it's crazy.
Yes,
I hope that they tell us what their theory is too about the fire extinguisher, because I know that they brought that up multiple times, and they said that screw on the wall was kind of pulled down a little bit, so it looked like it had been pulled. So I don't know if they think that he, you know, like fell over on it, but they haven't said anything about blood being on it specifically. But I don't know if they thought he fell over on it, or maybe he saw what was happening, he tried to yank it off and, you know, throw it at Tom, like to protect himself, or what. But
I don't know. There's probably a moment. I guess there's probably a moment if the fire extinguishers are involved that if it wasn't Tom that did it, first of all, because Tom didn't accidentally knock it off or just throw it on the ground just to, as like, well, this will add to my story. There's probably a moment that Mike knew that it was not going the way that they had planned, and that he was not getting out of there alive. So
it's crazy,
man. So today we're probably going to be both live streaming this afternoon because there's no break. But I think we're getting close to the end of the case. I really think we're close. I do too. I bet closing arguments are on Thursday. I mean,
I would think so. And, you know, Fahmy had said on an interview that he's planning on testifying. Now, I know that his attorneys have probably done everything they can under the sun to try to talk him out of that, because Lord knows he's
bad idea.
He's talked enough.
It's so bad.
I mean,
can you imagine? First of all, his language is going to be all over the place, and the judge is not going to be happy about that. But no, it's going to be bad. It's going to be a train wreck all over again. And I think the prosecution is chomping at the bit. I think they would love it if he got up there. But it generally is not a good thing to testify in your own defense. Very, very seldom. I think Dean Cummings was one that was good. That was a good choice for him, but very seldom. I think it helps to testify in your own defense if you are innocent. If you're guilty, it generally is not good for you. and it's not looking good for him. Did you see our Sarah Boone update this morning?
I did not. I've been working on the podcast. What's the update?
Her lawyer wants off again. Wrote another letter.
Oh, no,
asked the
really?
judge for a hearing. Says that he's been dealing with another capital murder trial. It's taken all his weeks and weekends, and that Sarah Boone is better served representing herself because no lawyer will satisfy her. It's a Zoom moment. Yeah, it's crazy. So I can't wait for that judge hearing. Well,
Her
Brandy,
and
either
Tommy
way,
are like a match made in heaven as far as that goes. They both can breeze through some attorneys.
yeah.
So
it's crazy. Sorry, I'm dying here. Couldn't reach my cough button in time.
Oh.
Okay, there we go. So we're probably both going to be live streaming most of today. I'm going to leave. I've got a meeting tonight. If I have to leave before it's over, I'll portal everyone over to you that's watching on my side.
Good.
But either way, I'm looking forward to doing the verdict watch or our verdict eyebrows thing. They're here in my package.
Yes.
I've checked them out, and they are just as impressive as they looked online. So those are going to be good.
I didn't even know that those were a thing, and I got those, and I was like, "Oh, this is hilarious!" So now it's become a tradition. So can't have verdict without verdict eyebrows.
Yep.
So,
so when we find out the schedule, we'll obviously be announcing how that's going to happen. We'll be over on your channel for that. So please, everyone, at least subscribe to Brandy's channel, so it'll be easy to make the jump on that day because we'll be over there, not over here. I think that's it. Good to hear from you again.
sounds like fun. Good to hear from y'all. Y'all enjoy the day, and for all of our people who bounce back and forth, we'll send notes back and forth to chats.
Yep. Ping pong is allowed. You can bounce back and forth. A lot of people watch both.
Yes.
It's all right.
Yes. All right. Bye, y'all.
All right. See ya. Bye. Love Brandy. She's amazing. Dodie says, what did I miss to hear about Sarah Boone? What happened? Her lawyer filed a motion to get released from the case again and said this client would be better served acting as her own lawyer, which is not true. No uneducated person is better served acting as their own lawyer in a murder trial. Didn't catch Sarah Boone. It's right at the beginning of this video. When we go back on the replay, it's all back there. Let's see. I think that's it. So is he testifying? I'm confused now. Megan, we don't know. He's said that he would, but he's said a lot of things before, and he's a bit of a I don't know, braggadocio. He likes to say big things, and maybe it's not necessarily the case. So he's said that he wants to testify. I'm not sure if he will. I mean, last time he didn't testify and he got convicted. Maybe this time he will testify thinking it'll be different. So we don't know. We'll have to hear and see if he gets called. And because of the way the judge has set everything up, first of all, the discussion with the defendant happens outside the presence of the jury. So I've got Johnny Depp's video playing in the background. I'm not sure how we got there, but it happened outside the presence of the jury, and the judge has ruled that we can't see or hear anything that happens outside the presence of the jury. So the cameras will be off, the mics will be off when she has that discussion. So we won't know until they call their next witness and they say Thomas Randolph, and he stands up. So it's going to be a surprise moment. It may happen today. He may be the next witness. So we're not sure, and they might just say we rest, and that's really going to be the moment when you find out whether or not for sure he's going to testify, unless we hear from the courtroom from somebody that will tweet something out for us. 2 articles about him testifying. One says he will. One says he'll discuss it with his attorneys. Please do discuss it with the attorneys. Brandy, thank you. Appreciate your continued support of the channel. By the way, you're amazing. We love you. Good luck on your stream today, and good luck with your podcast as well. If Tommy's going to testify, I'll have to wash my ears with holy water. It could be a little rough. It really could. His style that we've heard about Tommy is that's his style. That's how he is with everybody, and it just continues. So I imagine we're going to hear more of the same. Possibly he'll be a little more reserved, knowing that he's in court. We won't have the language that he has normally. A lot of people can sort of dial it back a bit when they're on the stand, even if they have some pretty crass language normally. His lawyers will take him before they let him take the stand to testify. They'll talk to him. They took him outside in the hallway yesterday, and they had a break, that 5-minute break. And I think that wasn't just to decide when they start tomorrow. I think they were talking about that with him. What time are we coming back? It starts at 2:30, so we're going to be back at 2, which is an hour and 20 minutes. We get a long lunch break for the first time in this trial. We need a counter ready in case he testifies. Do you think it'll be a curse counter? Cashette just gifted 5 Recovery Addict memberships. Thank you very much. We've had some amazing gifters today. These 5 went out to Monica, Charlene O'Donnell, Christine Kingsbury, Stephanie Poston, and KTS. Thank you very much, Cashette. Huge support of the channel and does amazing work. If you watched on the channel, she makes our shorts for us. That sounds weird. She makes the short videos for us that go out on the channel. I just appreciate all the work she does. And she also does some great work on her own on some of the other social media platforms with some of the content, which is wonderful. Let's see. Oh, Rebecca's calling in. Hold on a
Call
second.
from Rebecca and Buttercup.
We have both. We have the dynamic duo, Rebecca and Buttercup, together. I'm not sure if we'll hear from Buttercup. She can type better than she speaks, I think. How are you doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's been a good day. We're excited for this afternoon. The end of the trial is always a little bit more exciting the very beginning, usually. And so we're ramping up and getting ready for the end. So.
Yes, I've been keeping up with it. I haven't been online lately, but other things have happened, and which I told you about. Yeah. And I'm doing great.
Wonderful. Get plenty of rest in and get healthy, and keep the keyboard away from Buttercup, because we know what happens.
She is actually laying at my feet here on the floor. She's halfway under my bed where it's nice and cool, and her legs are sticking out. And she's been babysitting the chickens. Yeah. And she's been pretty good.
Is she getting better with the chickens? No more rough play?
She is. No, not too much rough play. But what happened is I have 2 pens now. Mm-hmm. And one is a 6-foot tall pen, and of course the other one is a little smaller 4-foot pen. And inside the 4-foot pen is the little baby chicken coop that the babies are in, right? And then the 6-foot pen, I have 2 white leghorns that they're older. Well, she will do circles and circles around each of those pens. She'll go circles around the 6-foot pen. She'll go into the little baby pen and go circles around the little chicken coop.
Just patrolling the perimeter, make sure everything's safe. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. She just lays down. She had her head and her legs laying next to the wire of the big chicken coop, and she was letting the white chickens peck at her feet.
Oh, wow. So, maybe they're going to be friends after all. They might be able to play when they grow up. So,
I think so. She did a big no-no the other day. It drove me crazy. Oh, she, before I had my surgery, she ran down the road. She spotted another dog.
Uh-oh.
And generally, I was taking the garbage out to the end of my driveway, and it's like, stay with me, Buttercup. And she's always done so well. And this last time she spotted that dog down that dead-end street, and she crossed the road, hightailed it down there. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. She almost gave me a heart attack.
Man. Better that she's laying under the bed sleeping. That's a better place for her right now. So.
She's in a good spot. But I just wanted to call and say hello.
Well, thank you.
That I'm doing fine.
You sound chipper. You sound like you're recovering well. We're going to continue to, thoughts and prayers your direction that continues. I can't wait for you to get back to full strength and doing all the fun mosquito counting and everything else.
Oh, yes. That'll be Monday. I'll go back to work on Monday.
Back to work. Somebody has to count them, and you do a good job at
it.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. Appreciate you calling in.
Thank you for all you do, Scott.
Yeah. We'll see you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Do we have... I think we're good. Let's see. I think we have everything else covered. We need a long break. We have to get lunch. I need lunch. I really do. It's been too many days without lunch, and I can't eat more Pop-Tarts. Let's see. Brandy's going to go back to work. I'm going to take a break. What happens if Sarah Boone can't find a lawyer? Ryan, this is a great question. Let me answer this, because I sort of started this earlier today, and I don't think I finished my thought. I think that Mr. Bankowitz sent this letter to the judge because he can't really tell Sarah Boone, you need to, be your own lawyer. But he wants to plant the seed in her head that she needs to be her own lawyer.
Call from. To accept, press 1.
Hey, this is Recovery Addict. Who's on the phone? Hello? Hello?
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I almost hung up. I thought we had a bad connection. Who is it we're speaking to?
Maui Bell.
Oh, Maui Bell. How are you doing?
Yep.
How's Hawaii
Not
doing?
very well.
How's Hawaii doing?
Terrible. Maui. It's Maui. And can I say what's happening?
Yeah, we've got to be pretty quick, but if you take just a minute, we can.
I know, it was on your lunch. So, if anybody who doesn't know me, I have been here since the beginning. I don't text a lot because I have MS. I'm 76, and so I'm in bed most of the day. I watch every day. Anyway, what is happening on Maui is that we're an island, and everything that comes here has to come by ship. And I think tourists don't realize this. But there's great need, and 1,000 people in a very, very small community. Maui's very small residents that live here, and 1,000 people are still missing. Man. So a lot of those are children. And we already know. And pets have not survived, but people cannot find them. The fire was so hot that it melted, steel, or it's all melted into the ground.
The videos we saw, the wind blowing the fire. You can imagine in a refining fire where they melt steel. They use a bellows to blow the fire, and it feeds that oxygen to it, and it can just get incredible heats. And that's basically what the weather was doing. That constant fresh air to the fire. Just incredible.
It was hurricane-type winds from Dora. It was the end of Dora. And, it was a firestorm.
Yeah.
But what I need is for someone to help me set up a GoFundMe because here on the island, we know what other islanders need and where to get it. We don't want things shipped in if we can help it because that just takes up boats for FEMA and that kind of stuff. So it's very slow. It might seem to others it's been a long time, but when you have 1,000 people still missing, I think there's 120 confirmed dead, and a lot of them were elderly because that's the population that lived up there. Yeah, close to the small shop. A lot of, we call them kapuna, just to, an elderly person who is of any descent, but it's a Hawaiian word. Mm-hmm. So we just need aloha, and so can I just give out my email so if somebody wants to help, they can?
Can you send it to them burner phone? And if there's somebody who's listening and says, hey, I might be able to help Maui Bell, I can connect the two of you together. It's
great.
This is a really good community, but we don't know, 5 months down the road who might watch this video and decide to spam your email with something that's not appropriate. So send it to my burner, and if there's somebody who's hearing this saying, hey, I could help Maui Bell with setting this up or how we can move forward, I'll be able to connect you two together.
And I know a lot of us are pet lovers, and so many pets need help.
Yes.
Vet bills, etc. The Humane Society is just full.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'll send that right now.
Maui Bell, I'm glad you're safe. Hearts and prayers for Maui for sure. But thank you so much.
A house I was going to rent burned down. So I could have never gotten out in time. And it went down to the ground. So I'm just so thankful. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Maui Bell. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Love you all. Love everybody. Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha. All right, good to hear from Maui Bell, but at the same time, just heartbreaking the situation there. Let's see. We have lunch now. Sorry, we're going to wrap up. We're going to play our music and get ready for lunch. We're going to be coming back at 2:00. 2:00 is our start time, maybe a little bit earlier, as we're just getting ready to have today's very exciting, I think, conclusion. I can almost say we're like 75% sure they're going to conclude today with the defense testimony. It should be pretty short. We might have a couple of rapid witnesses that they bring on the stand. I don't think they have witness after witness, expert witness. That's going to take a long time. So the judge says we'll be done by Friday. I think we'll be pretty close by Thursday, closing statements on Friday. So that's where we are. All right. Tonight, when you go home, please hug the people you love, smile at someone, make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe till we go live again. We'll be back at 2 p.m. today, 2 p.m. And we might be here for the whole afternoon because the judge is not giving us a lunch break. We're getting it now. We'll be back for all the fun stuff. So court starts live 2 p.m. We'll be about half an hour before they start, and we'll be here. We'll get together and be ready. So just a break for lunch. Just a quick break for lunch. I'll have the window open for chat. First person to chat, as always, will win the internet. Did I already say the thing? Did I say the thing already?
I'm not a cat.
Did I give my outro? I do not remember. I think I did. I think you're good. Somebody needs to tell me yes or no. Thumbs up. I'm running out of music. You said it. You said it, says Ketchup. All right. Hug your people. Yep. Do that thing. All right, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you after lunch. Bye.
I'm not a camel.
Is that correct?
Scratch all that.